Hi! I just scream. Hi, and welcome to the book club discussion for The Hobbit. I never know how to start these. Yep, this is our final read for 2022, and we have a full house of co-hosts. Yeah, the moment like the live banner goes on, I just forget how to speak.
We have a full cabin for this trip.
Correct. It is correct. Before we get into talking about The Hobbit, though, I just wanted to quickly announce the 2023 book club picks for the first few months, just because I don't know if people watch the replays of these, so they don't have to watch like a million years to get to the find out what we're reading next year, because I have not announced it yet. So next year I'm trying out this co-conductor system that every month there will be a co-conductor on board with me, just kind of like a verified co-host. Yeah. So when I announce the book, I will announce who's the co-conductor. The other co-host slots will be regular. As always, first come, first serve. Whoever wants to be here can be here. And co-conductors can have as little or much power as they want when they're on board with me. So, okay. So for January, we're going to just get it right into it. For January, we are going to be reading a series of unfortunate events with Casey as the co-conductor.
I'm very glad you're announcing this because I filmed my January TBR video and I straight up said I really hope Violet announces before my video goes live because I'm telling you what it is.
Well, I need to get my co-conductors all in order and make sure. Like that's why I'm only doing the first 3 months to make sure that this works. Because if the system doesn't work, I'm not going to continue to do this for the rest of the year. So. For February, this is going to be like our first crossover for February because we read middle grade and YA, but this was a crossover sort of young adult, which is Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson, and our co-conductor will be Marta. So yeah, 2023 is the year of Sanderson with all his secret projects coming out. So the perfect time to dip our toe into the Cosmere with Mistborn. So that will be the February pick. And for March, we will be reading The Ranger's Apprentice in collaboration with the Tome Traveler Book Club. So that is what we have going on for the beginning of 2023. I will also be posting this in the Discord and on Instagram when I get around to making graphics for this.
Man, if I remembered, if I saw your message in the Discord ahead of time, I could have pulled the books out so we could actually show them off because I have them all on my shelf.
Oh, nice.
So prepared.
They're there. Y'all can see how many books I have. Just trust that they're there.
Okay, so now we'll go back into Hobbit land, and I will have my co-hosts introduce themselves and their experience with the book. I guess I will go first. I first read The Hobbit in like 2014, 2015. I originally read it in German. I got it as a present from my partner when I was trying to read exclusively in German. Yeah, and I hadn't reread it since. I read it right before the first of the Peter Jackson movies came out. So yeah, I liked it. It was fun. I mean, I'd already been a fan of like the Lord of the Rings movies growing up, but I'd never read those books. And so this was a reread for me, and I read it in English for the first time. And I read the physical book alongside the Andy Serkis audiobook.
That is an S-tier cover of The Hobbit.
Yeah.
It is the ugliest cover I've ever seen.
I know Gollum looks so terrifying, but to be fair, that's kind of how he was described in the book.
He looks like a corpse, as he should.
Bilbo looks like if what's that School of Rock guy? Jack.
Oh yeah,
Jack Black.
Jack Black.
Jack Black plays in an SNL skit of The Hobbit. That's what it looks like.
You're so right.
Not an inaccurate description.
That's great.
Okay, Sam, would you like to introduce yourself and your history with The Hobbit?
Yeah, I'm writing Mom Smith at Onasset, and I tried to read The Hobbit when I was a preteen and could not get through it because I found it very boring at first. And I've enjoyed the movies, though. I was hoping going back and reading it as an adult, I would enjoy it more. And I do enjoy it more, but I think that's more because of like behind the scenes things that I know and are aware of for it. So yeah, this is technically my first read through.
Oh, okay, cool. I thought everybody was a reread, so it's nice to know that we at least had one new reader.
I'm always the new reader.
Oh, is it my turn? Okay. Hello. I have this copy with an illustrated cover because
That's the one I'm used to.
When I was a child.
I have it's up on the top shelf over there. I have the box set where the whole Lord of the Rings ones have movie covers, but this hadn't come out yet as a movie, so it's an illustrated cover. But yeah, The Hobbit is one of the first books that I remember my parents reading to me as a kid, and so technically this is, I think, my first time reading it myself, but like I had known the story already and like I grew up with Lord of the Rings. But yeah, I also read it and listened to the audiobook, and it was a fantastic decision.
And hi, I'm Michael. I do the AuthorTube streaming things. For me, as far as The Hobbit goes, I first read it, I guess, a long time ago now.
You read it right when it was published, right?
When it
Michael?
first published.
Yeah.
Something like that. Then
Him and Tolkien.
some
were
years
close.
later, I reread it. But even that reread is like some time ago now. So so now I've read it just now for this deal, and so that's my third read of it. And yeah, I guess on to you, Stieg, and very nice lights there.
Thank you. It's very festive. My name is
Yeah.
Teague. I'm a writer and professional hot mess. I stream every Friday on the Troublemaker channel if you haven't seen it. Girl or boy or they, them, or you missing out. Welcome to join. It's a fun time. My relationship to The Hobbit is that it is my favorite book. I don't know if you can see the pack over there, the stack on top of the shelf. That's all different copies of The Hobbit. I collect them. The first one I had was this, Norwegian edition, which is also the first one I read, which was a gift from my aunt. I think this is the first book I actively desired to have. So she gave it for me for Christmas. So every Christmas, not every Christmas, every like 3 years or so, I go through it and I read it. And this Christmas, I have been reading it again for the book club. And I've been reading this, which is like a illustrated version with like a cloth cover. There's some creepy little drawings in here. But yeah, I've been enjoying it the second, third, fourth, fifth time around. This is the first time I've read it in English, which was really interesting. And I also read it a lot more critically than I usually do, because we were doing this book club. So that was also a lot of fun. Yeah, and that's my spiel.
Okay. Well, I'm Casey, and this is my second time reading The Hobbit. It's the first time I was in the 8th grade, and it was a required summer reading book, which is a very common thing here in the U.S., or at least in the South. Everyone reads The Hobbit in the 8th grade. Don't know why. And I remember hating it every second. So in order to be able to make it through, I had the cassette tape versions of the audio book of the original audio, which was Rob. I don't remember how to pronounce his last name, but Rob's audio book version. And then, so that was my first experience, and I read along with the book that time. And then, but this time I did straight audio, and then I did I did Andy's version, and I actually found I shared it in the Discord. I actually found a time where he did a live reading for a charity event, and so it was kind of cool. I got to see him actually reading it while I was listening, so that was kind of cool. So this is my
That would
second
be
time.
awesome.
Yeah, I think the Andy version is so cool because like he is Gollum,
Mhm.
so he like definitely put a lot of flair on the
Oh,
Gollum
yeah.
bits. I noticed since I was reading along with the text, he added like a couple things that weren't quite in there, like
Mm-hmm.
some extra
But it was
growling and
fitting.
weird noises.
Like
He
it
gets
made it
really
feel
into
so
it.
much more immersive.
Oh yeah.
He did so well. Also, the other voices, his Bilbo voice, his Gandalf
Yes.
voice, his Tauren
Mhm.
voice. Like, I actually liked his Smaug voice better than Benedict Cumberbatch's Smaug voice. So
Yeah, I thought he did really good.
I did not prepare any special banners. So
One thing I will say about the version I watched, because it wasn't like the official like version that they put out for the audiobook, it was the charity version. It was kind of funny when he would get to certain parts and he wouldn't hit the voice right the first time. He'd back up and he goes, he'd get the voice. He goes, okay, that's it. And he'd go,
oh,
funny. Like when he go between the different dwarves talking to each other, and he's like, nope, that's not it. And then he'd go for it. And he's like, okay, I got it.
I loved that all of the dwarves had like their own voices because I'm not gonna lie, I did doze
They
off a
didn't
couple
have
of
their
times.
own personalities.
And, like even if I wasn't like paying attention to the physical book, I could still tell like, okay, this is
Mhm.
this dwarf, this is the other one. It was nice up until I dozed off and was woken up by Gollum. That was not nice, but
yeah, I feel like
Gollum's my
the
favorite.
dwarves really didn't have personalities.
No, I'm not saying none of them did. I'm saying
Yeah, but
they didn't
is it
all
is it
have
kind
one.
of shady that Bombor's only personality trait is being fat? And like Tolkien
I
points
felt
it out
so
so
fa-
often. Like so
I
often
felt
he
so
points it
bad
out.
for Bomford because like I feel like of the hobbits that weren't Thorin, he had one of the most like actual person I could assign characteristics to him, but like all the narration kept telling me was that he was fat and old and got tired easily. And I'm like, why are you so mean to Bomber or Bomber?
Yeah, it kind of does feel a bit like Tolkien has like this like the dwarves are almost like books on a shelf, I mean, and they're like book ended by like Thorin and then Bomber. You know, like there's Thorn and then there's oh yeah, the dwarves, blah blah blah, and then you know the bookend on the other end is
as
Bomber.
they're introduced, there's progressively less detail until you get to Thorin. So it's like Dwalin and Balin come in, and it's all like, you know, here's what they look like, and they've got like we find out Dwalin has very bright eyes. I can't tell you anything else about the other dwarves' eyes. Nothing. And
Well, we know they all
Because they
have
fall
beards
through the door.
because
They just-
Bilbo doesn't have a beard, and that's why they can tell he's not a dwarf. He's smaller
And-
with no beard.
yep.
and when it gets to like Dory, Nori, Ori, Owen, and Glowin, he's just like, there's two purple hoods, one brown hood, and a
Oh,
white one. I'm
I
like,
kept track. That's the only thing I kept track of. Who had
I'm
what
like,
color
do-
cloak? And then
yeah,
we
I'm
brought it
like,
up later
like,
when
am I
Bilbo's like, I
just-
saw the peak of a red cloak, and I was like, oh, I know that's Balin because I know he has the red cloak.
yeah, I was like, I'm just gonna have to assume that the cloaks belong to the dwarf in the order they were mentioned because
Right.
it's never
Oh, that's
stated
true.
when.
Yeah, that's true. Because he did just kind of say like,
I don't even
yeah.
know what color beards most of the dwarves have. I know that like some of them are blonde.
I think just Killy and
don't know
Philly
which
are
ones are
blonde,
brown.
and then the rest are not.
I just pictured them as the movie actors because
Same.
that's like
Same.
easiest
I'm
thing
just
to
like,
do.
Keely's the hot one. Got it.
Unfortunately, that's how I am with any book. Like once I see the movie version of the book, it doesn't matter how the book describes it. I'm gonna picture the actors. My brain just can't get away from it. I just can't.
The whole
I don't
visual thing,
know.
huh?
It is.
I
Yeah,
just
it's a
kind
very
of
visual thing.
pretend that the 3-part Peter Jackson movie adaptation of The Hobbit was kind of like a weird fever dream, and I kind of just like to pretend. Like I don't know, like why is it
fever
3
dream.
I
parts?
love
Why
them.
Yeah, see, I didn't like them as I was like as they were coming out. I was like, okay, but then after reading this, I realized like, yeah, they were inaccurate, but really all they did was add more elves. Like they didn't
Yeah.
change a ton; they just added more elves, and I'm like, okay, I guess that's forgivable because
I
like
have-
the elves are super.
I have mixed
popular.
feelings about the Hobbit movies. I did when they came out, and I still do. For one thing, Toriel, I know a lot of diehard fans hate that she was created because it's like, oh, well, she didn't exist in the book, and I know she was like put in the movie so there could be more female representation. But her only
Are there
existence is to
any
have a
female
romance with
characters
Keely, and
in the
that's it.
Hobbit in the book? Because I
No.
didn't
They
notice any
mentioned
female
Bilbo's
characters.
mother's name. She is
Yeah.
the
Oh,
only
okay.
one with the name in this, and I remember after I
and-
read this, I was like, "What?"
Hold on,
Okay,
and
good.
Keely
Like-
and Feely are Thorin's father's daughter's sons.
But she
Yeah. I
doesn't
don't
get
know
a
why
name.
She doesn't get a name, but she's
No.
mentioned.
Yeah, so they're Thorin's
the necromancer,
nephews,
that's a
right?
good point.
Yeah, they're his nephew. So how that goes is, I believe she's the oldest. So
No,
their mom
well-
is the oldest, and then it was Thorin, and then they had another brother, and then but he had
Yeah.
passed. Both the sister and the brother had passed, and it was just Thorin left
Okay.
of that bloodline.
But
So
yeah,
once Keely
I
and
think,
Feely passed, that bloodline ended.
Well, technically,
And technically, yeah.
that branch
The
of the
Oaken
bloodline.
Yeah, that
I
branch.
didn't
The
like
open
that
There's
they
a bunch
made.
of cousins.
I didn't like that they made Thorin hot in the movies.
What?
I didn't like that.
Wow.
Why didn't they make him look like a dwarf? Like he doesn't even look
Are you
like
saying
a
that
dwarf.
dwarves
Why
can't be
can't
hot,
dwarves
Violet?
be
That's like
hot?
discrimination.
I mean,
Yeah, they
yes,
can
I
be hot.
agree with
They can be
Violet.
hot- They can
I
be
like
big
Keely
nose. Like I
Demain
have a big
style.
nose. Like I want like hot big nose representation. Like
Okay, I can get on board with that. I'm just saying dwarves are just like short, stocky men. They can be hot.
I mean, it's
One
not that
thing
they're
I will-
not hot,
go ahead.
but to me it was like Thorin's super hot, Keely's super hot, Feely
And
like
then the rest
so
of
much
them are
transitional hot,
caricatures.
and then the rest are just like caricatures of people.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Like, yeah, I agree
Yeah.
with you, Violet. But I do appreciate a hot man, so here we are.
Yeah, one thing I will say before we get off the topic of the movie adaptations is I really appreciated how they went into what Gandalf was doing. You know, I liked how in the book, like, yeah, we got a little bit of perspective at the end, but not really all. He was like, yeah, me and a bunch of wizards went and kicked some ass on a necromancer, and it's like the end. That's all we get
By
from
the
it. But the movie, like they definitely dived in more about what Gandalf was doing with the necromancer and all of that. So I enjoyed.
I was
that.
just happy to see Kate Blanchett again. To be fair,
Never unhappy.
I can't confirm that I've actually seen like all of the three movies of The Hobbit.
You're not missing out.
I
the first
signed
one was
you.
great though. I thought the
Theaters.
first one was perfect. The second one was
Yeah.
alright. The third one, I don't know what fever dream they wrote that in, but that could have used another run through the editing.
Yeah.
Third movie was the
Peter
first
Jackson
ever
was
date I
tired
went
by
on.
that point.
It was
because-
so awkward.
If I
really?
remember in an interview, he said he didn't want to do 3. He wanted to do 2, but the studio was making him do 3, and they were on such a tight deadline. And just like by the end of the second one, he was just so drained of all of his like creative energy and desire to do it that it was actually a struggle for him to do the third movie. So that's probably why it's so much
Yeah.
less good than the other two.
I definitely will say the third movie is my least favorite of the other two, but I may have a less of a harsh critique of the Hobbit trilogy because I didn't actually even watch
What do you mean no?
Lord of the Rings trilogy until I graduated from high
Get
school.
your own live stream, Christopher. Stop bothering your wife.
split into 3 movies, so you're not
Well, he's
stressed
correcting
out
me.
about trying to fit.
Well, you can do so in chat for engagement.
Yeah. Okay, but
comments in chat.
but the other like interview, like he was just really tired by the third movie, and he didn't want to do it. So I'm not wrong. I just worded it differently and didn't have like that first part. But that first part is unimportant to what I was saying.
Do we want to just pull up some random banners? Because I only have the basic ones, like plot and pacing. I mean, this is the oldest book that we've covered, so it definitely was written in a different time. And I mean,
You can
Tolkien.
definitely tell that it was written as an episodic too, because there's like a lot of singular events that lead up to the Misty
Mhm.
Mountains. And like at the end of every singular event, it's like, but then Gandalf appeared and everything was alright. So that was a bit like, like,
So
especially in that troll scene where they're like, "Ooh, everyone's dying," and then but then Gandalf appears and it's alright.
So if I didn't know what Tolkien's intention for when he wrote The Hobbit was, I would be a lot harsher on the pacing, especially since there is one, I think it's the one when they're in Mirkwood, when there's like a tangent about the elves and like the history of the elves and stuff. And then the narrator goes, but that doesn't matter for what's going on. I'm like, you just dead ass told me none of this is relevant to the novel. Why is it here? But because what he wanted was to give England their own folklore, much like the Nordic Edda or like the Greek legends and everything, he was trying to build that, but for England. And like that's how the Edda and a lot of the like records for the Greek things are read. That's how they're done. So I was like, all right, since that was the style and the intention, then it did its purpose. For like a regular novel, not so much. But
Yeah, I think the pacing, I kept thinking about it as like, like, because it's a children's book. I kept thinking about it like a bedtime story. Like, we read, going one chapter at a time, like working our way through. Like, but, I read it over just a couple days. So, like, and that's like how I like to consume books is like very quickly to see the pacing and the whole story laid out. Yeah, and The Hobbit feels a little bit clunky like that.
I also would argue that while it's written like a children's novel, it's not a children's novel just because it does pack in so much and like it expects you to have a pretty thick attention span and memory for things and for the world building. And I know that back when he wrote it, all fantasy novels were published as children's novels, regardless of the story, because fantasy wasn't taken seriously at the time. So if it was a fantasy story, it was just automatically like, oh, okay, so this is for kids. So while it is written like a children's book, then I think it's more for adults or teenagers. Sir, the children's book statement is a true statement. I remember learning that when I did my research on the fantasy genre as a whole, and Tolkien was specific. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis were used as specific examples for it.
Well,
I
we could
also
get into a
feel
whole Tolkien. I didn't do
Excuse
enough
me,
like
I'm about to go fight my husband in the other room.
Yeah, just you two just going back and forth.
I also feel like it proves itself as a good book in the sense that, like, kind of like if you read it while you're growing up, the older you are, the more you get out of it. And I mean, I can see it as a children's book. I can see how someone could be, 10 years old, maybe even a bit younger, and like reading it and enjoying it, but then like years later reading it again, getting more out of it, and then years later again getting more out of it.
I will
Like
say I
that.
also have a bias because I read it when I was
Yeah.
10 and hated it. So
Yeah. No,
That's a
I
personal
Only
hated it when
one-
I first read it.
Only one
did-
direction to go, right? Up.
I mean, I
No.
loved
Did
it. I was like
But yeah.
5 when I first interacted with The Hobbit, but like I also read like Moby Dick when I was in 3rd grade. So like maybe I'm not the best source for what is a children's book and what isn't.
Did everyone read the revised edition?
I read
I listened to whatever edition Andy read 2 years ago on
Yeah.
YouTube.
Probably the revised edition.
I listened to the Andy.
Yeah,
Serkis
mine
one.
does have a
Probably.
note in the front saying that it
Because
What
you
is
were
the
saying that there were
difference between-
discrepancies versus like
yeah,
the
because
audiobook
this
versus
version I
the book.
have, this print was printed in the early 80s, this paperback.
Mhm.
So, like one time, like they were giving like their breakfast orders to Bilbo. Do you remember that scene? And in the audiobook, he said like one of them said like 6 eggs, but in the text it just said eggs, and I was like, why did they add a number like in the newer version? Like, what did that bring to the story? I don't know, but little
Excuse me,
things
as
like
my
that.
as this dog returns to her bone. It says right here that because of the popularity and success of The Hobbit and C.S. Lewis's The Chronicles of Narnia, fantasy began to be taken more seriously and adult fantasy became a thing. So it wasn't when it was first published. The Hobbit
Yeah.
helped make fantasy mainstream and allowed for the adult category to be added to the genres.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I actually didn't know this was a children's book. I thought it was just as dense as Lord of the Rings. So I loved the Lord of the Rings movies, like when I was, because they were coming out when I was young. I wish I would have known that this was meant for kids, because then I would have picked it up then. But I didn't know that.
I will say it has a mixture of like what I call old grandpa fantasy voice and old man fantasy voice, in which I didn't mind a lot of the ramblings because of the way that it was written. Whereas in like other adult fantasy books, I'm like, move on, please. I don't care. But in this one, I was like, oh, okay, well, that's a neat detail.
I think
So.
like if you would give this to kids going into it blind, like, yeah, maybe they wouldn't love it. But like if they had seen,
The movies.
the Lord of the Rings movies and been like, oh wow, I really love that. Like me and my brothers loved those films. Like we loved Gollum, we loved the Hobbits, we loved the whole thing. But I mean, we didn't quite understand the plot either. So
I can let you know with the sample size of 3 because my middle child found out that we were doing a Hobbit live stream. And so he asked me what the Hobbit was, and I explained it to him. And then he asked my husband if we could watch the Hobbit. And so they've now seen the first movie. And my youngest just found out I have the audiobook on our Libro, so they might listen to it when they finish the movies.
Oh.
That'd be fun. Yeah, I definitely think that if I wasn't just forced to read it in 8th grade, I probably still wouldn't have liked it as a kid. It still is really dense. Like I honestly back then I didn't even like reading. I couldn't even get through the first Harry Potter book back then. So whatever. But I don't see how it was a required summer reading thing
that's fair, yeah.
every year for children. But
Do we have anything specific to say about the prose writing style?
I liked the writing style a lot. It was very like you were telling a bedtime story, I feel. Like it didn't feel like I was reading a book. It felt like I was being told a story. Like it kind of reminded me of The Princess Bride, how it's very much meant to be an oral story and not specifically read. And it was very nice. I enjoy it.
Yeah, there was like sometimes these like lighthearted voicey moments, like, oh, but we're not gonna, like just talking about like what Bilbo was like flubbering on the inside. Like my partner commented because he had never read the book, like, oh, this makes so much more sense, like the riddle scene with Gollum, like to hear Bilbo's thoughts going through it, because like in the movie it just makes Bilbo seem a little bit like, oh, I'm gonna say what's in my pocket, and I know that, oh, time. I knew the answer was time, but like in the book, that Bilbo didn't know that, and he was just flustered, and it brought so much more to the scene, like those moments.
Yeah.
And I also loved the beginning of the book, how Tolkien really just set up the coziness of the Shire and the Hobbit holes. Like it feels so cozy, the beginning. Like I started reading on Christmas Eve, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so perfect and warm. I don't know. I didn't want to leave. I knew we were going on an adventure, but I was like, I don't want to leave the Shire. I want to stay here.
Yeah, I think the writing's really, really good.
And also very different to Lord of the Rings, I feel like. As someone who's read both.
I was just going to say, I haven't read it.
agree.
I haven't read it in years. I can't remember what Lord of the Rings is like.
I'm still
I feel like
intimidated
Lord of
to
the
pick
Rings
it
is a
up.
lot stiffer in the prose and a lot because one of my favorite things about A Hobbit is how like informal it is. As you, Danny, says, it just feels like someone sitting and telling you a story. But Lord of the Rings definitely reads more like epic old man fantasy, or what do you ever want to call it.
I
So I
think
thought that was
I think
like
that's what makes it more how Tolkien was trying to make it more of a children's book. It's like he
No,
kind of intended to be
well,
like
first some
to read
clar-
a little younger.
for some clarity, Tolkien didn't intend for The Hobbit to be a children's book. It was just the publishing company made it a children's book. But I think he like told it to his kids.
Yes, I thought he had written it for his kids. That's
But
why
yeah,
I understood.
the editor might have made him.
And I
He
thought
wrote it
that,
for his children, and the first
yeah.
edition is very whimsical. And then post Lord of the Rings, he went back and changed it to be like more in line
But
with
yeah,
the Lord of the Rings theme.
Oh,
But
okay.
yeah, the
okay, that makes sense.
popularity, the popularity of The Hobbit allowed for adult fantasy to exist, and so then he could write
Well,
Lord
yeah.
of the Rings as strictly adult fantasy.
Yeah.
But yeah, he didn't
So-
intend for it to be a child's book. Publishing
that makes
companies were
more
just
sense.
like, well, that's the only fantasy that we write. Which is why I was saying stylistically it does kind of feel like a kid's book, but I don't actually think it's a kid's book.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yeah, just for
Well,
good
Do you
clarity.
think he meant the first edition of The Hobbit to be like a children's book, like a fairy tale book?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that much like about Tolkien and his life. I was under the assumption that the Lord of the Rings main trilogy had started out as him like building the Elven language and like a linguistics thing.
Yeah, because he was trying to build the folklore up, so like the folklore
Yeah.
and the fairy tales.
So I think maybe he just fully nerded out on that.
100%. It was
Tolkien-
also like his way of coping with something, though I don't remember what.
Definitely
Kids.
being in the war.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you read accounts of him and like his time fighting in the war, and like you can see definite, like it's not like one to one, but you can see how the story of these people going out on an adventure to stop this great evil and getting to go home is like very much a coping mechanism for all of the
Yeah.
people he knew who
I can see
didn't
that.
get that.
I will
Yeah, I
also
would
say,
actually be
I've-
curious to see if kids would find some of this stuff scary, like in the forest in Mirkwood or with Smog.
that just reminds me of the Graveyard Kid editor's kid. But would they be honest? That's the question.
Would they be honest? Yeah. What was I gonna say? Tolkien really gets kind of credit for being like the father of modern fantasy, or fantasy in general, with a lot of the
I
archetypes. So I just have
have
a banner:
a lot to
hobbits,
say.
dwarves, elves, wizards, dragons, and more.
I have so much to say on this as a lover of fantasy and someone who's done far too much research into fantasy as a genre and everything. I call it Tolkienism. See, there's fantasy and then there's Tolkien's fantasy. And Tolkien's fantasy is what a lot of modern fantasy is attributed to, the whole, medieval Dark Ages Europe, which isn't even accurately representative of Tolkien's fantasy. But because he wanted to build his own folklore, he pulled from other mythologies a lot, and I will never forgive him for dwarves. I just won't. I will beef with this man who's passed on far too long because of this. Because dwarves are from Norse mythology. And in Norse mythology, they're essentially the same thing as elves, except they're obsidian skinned, and elves, I forgot what color they are. But yeah, Tolkien taking dwarves and doing what he did to them, that's not what dwarves are. And now the entire world, when they think of dwarves, they think of Tolkien's dwarves, and I will never forgive him for that.
Oh,
That's a
Wait.
fair point.
Then
then
elf stuff are like based on more Celtic Fae type things, which is why they are the way that they are. Orcs are 100% him, though. He did that. So. But I think the influence that he had on fantasy is both amazing and regrettable, because people like to dictate that if it doesn't fit with their idea of Tolkien's fantasy is, then it's not fantasy, or you're not doing fantasy. And that's just a disservice to fantasy in general. But also, Dungeons and Dragons exist because of Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, and I love Dungeons and Dragons. So I have very mixed feelings with Mr. J.R.R. Tolkien, but none of this is his fault because he just wrote some good stories. That's all he's blamed for. That and dwarves, I won't disagree.
yeah, for sure. No one's had as big an influence on any genre as he has on fantasy. I mean,
Well,
I think that's
don't
pretty
know
safe to
about
say.
that. Marie Shelley did invent sci-fi, so there's that.
That's true.
Well, that's not fantasy.
Yeah,
Well,
but
he-
if we're just talking other genres, I mean, yeah, you can definitely put like,
Yeah.
I mean, getting off topic, but yeah, when you think authors who have an impact on fantasy, Tolkien, he's always going to be number one when you're talking fantasy. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
a lot of
Sorry, I might have misheard. I thought he said like no author has had as big an influence on any genre as Tolkien had on fantasy. So that's probably just me mishearing. That's my bad.
fair enough.
Oh,
They didn't. He mean the thing is, he has dragons, but like they don't really. He doesn't go like as much as Smog is sort of painted as the big bad of the story. He's kind of like
He's there for 10 minutes.
yeah, it's a little bit
He
anticlimactic.
has 2 scenes. And then it's like, why is this motherfucker taking so long
Am
to
I
get back
the
to
only
his
one
lair?
who wonders like what Smog is doing the whole time? Was he just like literally just like taking a nap on all that treasure like that
Yeah.
whole time? Like I don't know. Like the dragons didn't seem to have a lot of depth to them. Like
I think you're supposed to get that he was just laying in the cave. I don't know how he grew because like by the time the dwarves and then come along, he can't fit out the entrance anymore. He like breaks it, I think. So
He ate all the dwarfs.
Well, and
That's
also, like,
fair.
where does he go for like the 2 days before he attacks Lake Town?
he was
he just
hunting the
disappears.
ponies, the motherfucker.
yeah, I was just gonna say he did eat the
Eating
ponies.
them.
He
But
did
6
eat the
of
ponies.
them
That-
survived.
He ate the
well, that's
ponies
true.
before he attacked Lake Town because
No, he only ate
that's how he
6
knew
of
about the dwarves.
He only ate half of the. I was keeping track of the ponies.
Oh, so he
lives.
was hunting all the other ponies.
Yeah, because he
Oh.
ate 6 of the ponies. And we know this for a fact because he says, "I ate 6 of them, and I will hunt the other 6 down." And then later on, they're like 3 survived, and I'm like, "Oh, good."
Oh, thank the
'Cause
Lord,
I
no
was
more
so
ponies.
upset. Because the first ponies got eaten by the goblins. The other
Mhm.
ponies were thankful, or the second set was returned to Bjorn because they're like his babies, and we don't want to angry bear the bear. And then the third set, Smog ate 2/3 of them.
I'm gonna be honest. I forgot that the first ponies got eaten by the goblins, and I was pretty traumatized when that scene came around.
Oh, Chris says that
Oh.
they did, yeah.
He used to go out and eat, but he hadn't been seen in a few decades. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. That's what I got the hint of as well, that people hadn't been seeing him. So I was like, what was he eating? Like, what was he doing? It just made it sound like he was taking a nap. But then when he
His
was like
dumbass
monologuing,
is
he's
just
like,
a
I've
dumbass.
been getting bigger. I've been getting stronger. My armor
I
is
was-
so good. I was like, you've just been lying around. Like,
I was extremely impressed with how quickly he knew the cup was gone.
Right.
I think a lot of smog is explained by just magic, right? I
Dragon.
mean, you know,
He
But,
definitely
like-
just feels like a caricature of greed, and like he doesn't have to make complete sense as long as he fits that mold.
If I
Yeah.
remember right, which I could be misremembering because I only passively know about deeper lore in the universe, the dragons are like, or at the very least, Smog is some sort of evil dragon, and just being around him makes people like greedy and stuff because he's just like super greedy. And then him laying on the gold for so long, his like evil greed seeps into the gold and the treasure, which is why Thorin goes a little-
yeah. I think Tolkien refers to it as the dragon sickness,
Yeah.
Well,
right?
that's what
Because
the
there's
movie
the
called it, but I don't think
The
Did
the
he-
book
what's
referred
his-
to it as
yeah,
well.
Tolkien
'cause-
said something. Yeah, I wasn't.
Yeah,
the
sure.
he said
master
something
of
at the
Lake
end.
Town gets the
Mhm.
dragon sickness and
Yep.
Yeah.
kind of
So
goes
it's not
a bit
even just the dragons. That's what they call it when you go, like when you go off and you get, like you get too greedy with your gold and you
Yeah.
get like
Yeah.
it makes you go crazy. They called it like the dragon sickness or something like that. Yeah.
yeah.
I'll
'Cause they
also
said
say,
that's what happened to the person at Lake Town.
spoiler.
Yeah, the
I,
master
like,
just gets the
forgot-
dragon sickness and then he just kind of tries to run away with some gold and then just dies or something.
I will say I had forgotten like 90% of what happened in the Hobbit movies. So I'm like listening to it, and then the character of Bjorn shows up, and I'm like, his name is Bear. Is he a bear? And then Smokey's a bear shifter. And then like Thorin dies, and I was like, oh shit, I forgot Thorin dies. And they're like, Keely and Feely died too. I'm like, oh shit, I forgot they died. Well, there's Thorin's bloodline. I also accidentally made Smokey the bear joke because I forgot that Bjorn was a bear. So like Gandalf throws the burning pine cone down to attack the wargs, and then the forest starts burning, and I'm like, why are you burning the forest? Smokey the bear would be greatly disappointed in you. And then like they get to Bjorn's and he's a bear shifter, and he's like going to investigate what happened, and I'm like, is Bjorn Smokey the bear? Y'all are in so much trouble.
Wait a minute. Okay, going back to like gauging if scenes were scary. When they're in the trees and the wolves were down there, that was genuinely scary. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like that was
That is
scary.
what made Dory my favorite dwarf, though, because he's all like sitting there bitching. He's like, "Why do I always gotta carry the hobbit?" And then like the wargs are coming, and he's just like, calmly letting Bilbo climb up, and then does a run leap for a branch. I'm like, Dory, you're my favorite. This is the only thing that you do is carry Bilbo and save his life right here, but you're my favorite now.
And I also misremembered the eagles because I feel like I see so many like memes online about like, well, why didn't the eagles just take him the whole way, or why didn't the eagles like? But they explained it pretty like well, right? Like the eagles were like, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah, the eagle's like, that's not our job.
Yeah,
they're like pretty
like be
neutral.
grateful we saved you.
They're like, look,
Yeah.
if we can help, we'll help. But like, if we might die, no, who are you to us?
Like that's
No
one
one?
thing for sure. The movie always made it seem like Gandalf commanded the eagles, like, and it was,
Yeah.
or like it was one of the other wizards that like sent the eagles to them to save them. And it's like, no, the eagles decided to show up and rescue them. They weren't told to do anything.
I also like when the Lord of the Eagle was like, we would take you closer, but then people will shoot at us because they think that we're going to steal their sheep, which we do.
Right.
He's just like, yeah, we do that.
Stig, you wanted to share with the class? Or
Yeah. You just-
Well, I was having a nice little private discussion with Christopher.
Private discussion in a public chat room.
Exactly.
Does
Yeah,
anybody
just-
have?
I
Oh, sorry. You can say.
Nope.
I was
Nothing.
I was just gonna I'm talking about the banner that's up if I need to change it. Do we have anything else to say about hobbits, dwarves, elves, wizards, dragons, and more?
I'm thinking. No, I'm good.
I'm just thinking of a bunch of memes that are not actually to do with the story.
What about like Tolkien's approach to his whole, or the story's whole magic system? You know,
Yeah, for sure.
like
Very
magic system.
old world magic does whatever the fuck I
Yeah.
say it does, and what I don't want it to do, it doesn't. And I love that. It's one of my favorite approaches to magic.
It's a
super
very
One of my-
soft magic system.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things was
Just a
the what's it called? The anachronisms of the story.
Anachronisms, yes.
Like he had like a waistcoat and like a pocket watch and a clock, I think. And like they played clarinet, two of the dwarves. So it's like you have
Forgot about
Rohan on the
that.
inside that has like funeral pyres and like horse kingdom. And then you have dwarves playing clarinets, which was like invented in the 18th century. Like it made no sense.
I love
agree
that they all
it's-
had their own instruments. That was the funniest moment because I
That
like
was
didn't remember
hilarious.
that at all. And then they're like, and Thorin brought out his harp. I guess.
Such a regal royal instrument. I agree that it's anachronistic on the count that Tolkien was very adamant that Middle Earth was in fact Earth. So yeah, it should follow an Earth timeline. Those things should
Well,
not
not
be-
even that, but they had like
Otherwise, I'd just say
clocks, which
fantasy.
is like what 13th, 14th century. Like his aunt who tried to steal his silverware had like an umbrella that she could like take together, which is like 17th, 18th century invention,
Like I said,
and like
I'm agreeing
waistcoats
with
with
you.
golden buttons.
There's
It's
also the
supposed to be Earth.
golf reference, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember that. And I was like, what?
And then I
Yeah.
also noticed, like just late in the book, he uses the word gun.
I
Like
noticed that
GUN.
too. I noticed that too, Michael. I flagged it in my book. I was like, "What?"
So
Yeah, I
flagged
kept
a couple
feeling
moments
like
that.
there was moments where like the narrator would like kind of step out of the book
like
and
the
say
narrator
things
is
that
not
like was more modern for that time, you know, when he wrote it. But kind of like took you out. It's like, oh, they're not in Middle Earth.
It's especially when that motherfucker's all like, and he wouldn't see the eagles again until the Battle of Five Armies. But that's not till
Yeah,
the end
it's
of the
like, that's
story. And I'm like, why are you bringing it up? Why,
Yeah.
why would you do that? Now I know there's gonna be a battle and there's gonna be 5 armies, and that is we're still in Mirtwood, I think.
Yeah, well, it always threw me off every time the narrator did like I statements because, like,
Yeah, it
you know, like
was.
my writer brain is like, "Why are you now talking in first person, narrator? Don't do that. It bothers
I
me. It
just
hurts my brain.
did-
Please don't do that."
he did the second person thing that makes me hate when people write in second person when he's all like, oh well, it's not what you would think, and I'm like, how you know? You don't know me. And especially a lot of the times when it's like, well, it's not what you would think. And I'm like, that is exactly what I would think. I have read too much fantasy. You can't fool me, narrator. So
See, I liked that
hate
kind of like
that.
step back because it's like because Lord of the
I-
Rings was written to be like a translation. He's like, these aren't my stories; these are stories that I found and I'm
and
translating
that's
for everyone to
perfectly
read.
fine
And I
as long
think
as
it's
he's
really
not
fun.
telling me how to think.
Okay,
That's
like
when I have a
I give
problem.
it a pass because it's so old, but like if I was
Yeah.
gonna edit this today, it's like you either would have to turn up that like omniscient narrator or turn it down. Like it was
I
like
feel like
at that
those are like the
weird
cliff
middle
notes.
point.
Those are like his cliff notes that like weren't edited out. They were just it's kept into
Those were his
into the book.
parentheses. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I will say, I, controversial to myself, feel that they did kind of work, if only because of the narrative style. But my rebellious nature, every time he did it, was activated, and I'm like, how dare you? You
yeah,
have
I
no idea
liked
what
the
I'm
voicey
thinking.
moments. It kept it
So.
feeling young and fun, and lighthearted.
Yes.
Well, it was supposed to be set in our Earth, and unrevised edition had policemen and lampposts and mentions of China. Whoa, interesting.
Oh, so the Hobbit's allowed to have policemen and lampposts, but God forbid that the Chronicles of Narnia has Santa Claus. I just remember reading like an account of Tolkien and Lewis discussing their books, and Tolkien getting very mad at Lewis about having Santa Claus in his book. He's like, "You can't do that," and Lewis was like, "Watch me."
Okay, but if we're going
I
to be
love
fair
their
talking
friendship.
about fantasy, like, of course there's rules, but also it's fantasy, so like you make the rules.
Well,
Yeah.
that's why I was saying I agree that they are anachronistic only because it is supposed to take place on Earth and be an account of Earth's of like an alternative Earth's history. But also I don't mind the anachronistic elements. They don't even stick out to me. I, unlike somebody, don't have an encyclopedic thesaurus knowledge of all of the centuries these things were invented in. It might bother me if I
all
did, though.
studied for the Tolkien pop quiz that's coming.
Well, I
up
do know that
after.
like the waistcoat and the clarinet was not invented on the same day.
Yes. Little do we know.
Little did we know, Tolkien, he was just on a whole nother level than us guys. Well, to be fair, he was, but well, I don't know. I don't know what you guys' books I like. Songs. This is everybody's favorite discussion topic. Let's tier rank the songs. What's everybody's favorites, least favorites? Did you sing along?
Of course.
I like
I
the
was-
goofy song that the elves sang because I like
Bilbo
the elves
Baggins.
in the Hobbit
the
are
elves,
so
yeah.
silly and weird, but I feel like the elves in the Lord of the Rings are very like stoic and all business, and it was just such a difference. And I'm like, heck yeah, let the elves have some fun.
Yeah, that was really weird. Him just getting woken up by like this elf lullaby.
Didn't it seem
Let
like
me tell you though, I'm salty about that because I was at the end of the book. I was trying to wrap up my notes and everything, and it's like Bilbo woke up to this song, and then he like scratched his head and said goodnight and went to bed, and I'm like, why did I just need that? I liked
Okay.
the lullaby. It was probably my favorite song in the book, but I was so salty about that. I was like, I didn't need
Well,
that.
I think
sir.
obviously the best song is like the Dwarves song, their Misty
Mhm.
Mountain
Misty
song.
Mountain.
Misty
Oh.
Mountains.
Oh, for sure.
Classic. So
But I
good.
also
is.
enjoyed Bilbo's little like freestyle song
Well-
that he did to Smog. He was like
riddles.
running away. Yeah.
I will say though, the elves song, particularly when they arrive, I think it's when they arrive in Rivendell, and the elves just knows everything, and I'm like, why are they omnipotent? What is going on? Are they
Didn't
mind
it feel
readers?
like they
They know all
like
these
sorry
things.
for the pun, but didn't it feel like the elves were trolling? Like, oh, we're just like
Little bit.
Yeah.
A little, yeah.
The elves, the different elves definitely felt like they were not the same creatures.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, these elves were not in Lord of the Rings or Rings of Power.
I think
Felt more
yeah.
like
No, my
kind of
favorite
more
song
like
is the
Irish
Little
elves
Older ones.
than
Yeah,
like
that's what I
Tolkien
was
elves.
thinking. The ones in the forest were more like the like Celtic elves or
Yeah, like
Celtic.
mischievous and like punny, trolly, if you will.
Yeah,
Mhm.
mischievous, cute. They know too much. Also, Smog had a weird. Sorry, I just remembered this. Had a weird like Fae thing where it's like you shouldn't give a dragon your true name, and then it never told me why, and I was very
Oh, I
curious
liked
about
those
that.
moments where like everybody knows that dragons are like so persuasive and stuff. I was like, oh, I didn't know that, but I know
Do
it now. I like those moments.
I really
prefer
liked Bilbo's
book
little
Smog.
poem. His poem when he goes home.
Yes,
I really liked his little poem. It was pretty-
his like final moment of peace before he finds his relatives auctioning off all his
Okay.
stuff.
When I was the first time I read that book, that was the two key things that stuck in my head is why is there a whole chapter describing the Hobbit hole? And
Atmosphere.
mind you, as an adult, I'm like, yes, give me more cozy Hobbit hole feels. But as a kid, I was like, the hell is this shit? And two, I was so angry that they had sold all of his stuff.
He
And
was
then
gone
Oh,
for
yeah.
so long.
he was gone
I
for
don't
a year.
care.
Okay, I don't care. He had okay,
At
whatever.
some point, you have to just declare him dead and just be gone
He's
with
like
it.
he's half took. They should wait at least 10 years. They
Okay.
No,
should.
no, no. I'm
Okay, no,
I'm
no,
at
I get-
Lobelia,
okay.
and I am auctioning off that entire house
Also,
within the
why
next
didn't
month.
Gandalf, who has all this power to go every freaking which way, do all the errands, not just come back and put a note on the door for Bilbo that's like still alive coming back?
Okay,
Like,
garage sale aside. The man shows up. He's like, here I am after a year. They're like, nope.
you're not Bilbo.
You got to prove you are who you are. I want my forks and spoons. Nope. I want
Get
my
this
Hobbit
Hobbit
hole.
Get
Nope.
They got mad at the man for surviving.
To be
Oh my
fair,
God.
Bilbo had some
Baggins
good
will
real
never be
estate. I would
friends
also be
again.
like,
I'm
Wow.
telling you, Aunt
Hobbit
Lobelia,
hole.
she's a Capricorn, and I understand her. He's sitting on the finest hole in the hill, and
yeah,
it's about to be
prime
mine. Just saying.
location. Well,
Yeah,
Justice for Lobelia.
yeah. Hashtag my president.
okay, maybe not song, but song adjacent. Are the riddles? You know, riddles in the dark is hands down like my favorite chapter in the entire book.
Oh, yeah.
I
Mhm.
adore Gollum. I adore this chapter. Like I get chills every time. Like the moment like Bilbo picks up the ring for the first time. It's like, ooh, like
All
I love
right.
it.
Yeah,
It's
no,
just
Smeagol's like my
Smeagol's
favorite
written
character
down.
ever.
I feel like even people who haven't read The Hobbit know like Riddles in the Dark. Like it's that scene is the defining scene of the book.
Of the entire universe, like the known universe, I'd say.
Yeah.
Like imagine him picking up that ring on that cave floor, and then that'll lead to like Lord of the Rings.
That's true.
That's insane.
You could probably even say there's like a riddles trope or something in fantasy that traces back to this book.
Well, Michael, I mean, I couldn't help but to think about you when I was reading it. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize. Is this where Michael got his riddle gene from? Like,
I remember liking the riddles.
Except
you know,
Gollum
both-
doesn't fill his
both
riddles
times.
with like unnecessary fluff. I'm just saying, Michael.
I can
remember
figure
the
out their
first
riddles.
time I read it, I stopped and tried to figure them out. But this time, obviously, I mean, I'd already read it, so like I just read it through. But and then it seemed like they were doing them so fast.
I would hazard a guess that Tolkien was inspired by riddles because of like the riddle of the Sphinx and other similar, because it is a thing in ancient mythology that things that are guarding some sort of treasure have a riddle, and if you answer the riddle, then you get
Right.
that treasure. And that's
Doesn't
exactly
also
what
like
Tolkien did.
Irish and Celtic lore have a lot of riddles for the elves?
I
Am I
think
just
so.
making that up?
No,
Did
I
you
think
guys
you're
have
right.
a favorite of the riddles?
Let me look at
I like the one about the teeth.
Yeah,
The 30
I think
white
the
horses
mountain
on a
one.
red hill. First they champ, then they stamp, then they stand still.
Maybe for me, the
Because
egg
then
one.
Gollum goes, but I've
Oh,
only
the
got
egg one is
6.
good, yeah.
And he goes,
Eggses, you mean? They were eggses,
Eggses.
Michael. Eggses.
Oh,
Eggses it is.
my bad.
the mountain one, which is the
Like
first
the
one.
mountain.
Although the time one is my favorite way of how it was solved.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Bilbo with
that
the
was
stress.
so cute. I don't know. I just love Gollum. So
I also like the
And-
wind one too.
And Tolkien also has this thing where like eyes don't just glow as in they basically reflect light back to the person, say looking at the creature or the person or whatever the thing, but they actually glow. Like he has this thing where
emit
eyes actually glow, and then there's even that part explicitly where Bilbo is like looking at Gollum from behind. I think Gollum has just rushed past him because Bilbo has just put the ring on and become invisible and fallen down. And like Tolkien explicitly says that that Bilbo can see the faint like light against the rock wall coming from Gollum's eyes as Gollum is kind of looking back and forth.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then also like later on, and with Smaug the dragon, like actual
literally-
light coming from, yeah. But anyway,
Smog had fog lights for eyes too. So much so that Bilbo didn't need a torch when he went into the den initially. Also, Smog was extremely cattish, and I appreciate that.
yeah, I forgot that I liked Smog so much because movie Smog I didn't like. So
I like the little doodle of Smog on the map. Find it again.
Will you hear me?
Oh yeah, the cartoon Hobbit movie. Has anybody seen the animated one?
No.
It's really
think
dry.
I did
It's
eons ago.
the narration
Really
has
dry?
like no yeah, like the person like there's no personality, like there's no like emotion to the. It's like they're just like reading it very like monotoned.
Like stagnant. No, that's
Yeah.
not the word I want. Flat. That's the one I want.
Yeah, it's very flat delivery of the lines, and the Gollum in the animated version is creepy. I don't like him.
Can you pull up a picture? Let's see.
Oh, do I have the technology to do this? I'm sure I do.
I will say.
I haven't seen The Hobbit, but I knew they adapted. Sorry.
You're fine. Go.
I was gonna say I knew they adapted The Lord of the Rings. So here's I have this magazine.
I'll make you big.
So that's their little illustrations for like the
Yeah, that's the poster for it.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, that's
So that's
the,
supposed to be Bilbo.
Yeah.
yeah, kind of looks like a toad.
He looks like
The movie poster is ace though.
from
Yeah, the movie
Labyrinth.
poster is really cool.
I kind of want that as a print.
Yeah, that's for
This
the
is
Lord of
the-
the Rings. I didn't know the Hobbit was also.
This is the Smaug in the illustrated version I have.
Oh, that's
The
creepy.
Smog or Gollum?
The Gollum.
Well, Gollum.
Oh, that golem is cute. I like that golem.
Yeah, he I like this one.
And then he has a little fog light vision on the next page.
Well, that's fun.
I like that. That's
Ooh.
cool.
Oh, I like
I
that
need
too.
to know how one.
Yeah, the
goes from
creepy
being a
image of
hobbit
him just going across the lake in his little boat.
With a
I'm
little
like, oh, that
light.
just is so creepy.
Yeah, and his
That's my
feet
favorite scene in the
like
movies
paddles.
too. I love him.
Yeah.
I love Gollum.
Yeah, I liked book Gollum and how he describes like eating the guts of fish and stuff, like so visceral. I was like, oh, I love it.
Mhm.
It's just so
That-
creepy.
That scene starts out with such a dreadful, like, the intent is to get across a dreadful feeling, and it's well done. So the writing, it skill wise is very good, but it's like this cave is where the father of fish have swam in and never swam out, and then the fish have like grown large eyes to try to see in the dark, and I'm like, this is you're definitely setting a different tone and feel for this particular scene coming up.
I loved it. I think that's what they should do next. The next Rings of Power spin-off. The Gollum years. The Gollum years.
The Gollum years.
His Gollum era, his flop
Well,
era.
I mean, honestly, from his transition, spoiler alert for
Yep.
anyone that hasn't seen The Lord of the Rings, his transition from a Hobbit to Gollum, from Schmeagol to Gollum, is I want to know.
I
it.
would like to see that because he goes from a hobbit, and we know what hobbits look like, to
Yeah.
a corpse-ish looking creature with glowing eyes.
Yeah.
I mean, they do
And-
also say that even as a hobbit, he was kind of weird. Like he wasn't a normal hobbit.
But glowing eyes, that's a magical transition, and I need
But
to
that's a magic
know
ring, though.
how
Isn't
it
that
can
the
be.
one that transforms him? The ring just
I
brings out
don't
what is
think the
on
ring
inside.
gives anybody else glowing eyes, but it could be
I think
wrong.
It gives Sauron a glowing eye.
it
It-
didn't.
it-
But I
to be
mean,
fair,
Bilbo
the
had it for a
ring-
long time.
Yeah,
Actually, I
but
don't know
it
that.
effed up Bilbo too, and it effed up Frodo
Yeah.
too. Even I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
Dude, Bilbo's scary face in the movie was one of the most terrifying things I'd ever seen as a child. I was, I think, like 3 or 4 when the first movie came out, and like that haunts me.
The way Frodo reels back to, like, holy fuck, and like
Hmm.
that's the only appropriate reaction, Frodo.
No, I agree that I think that would be like a cool story to have is like his
Yes.
transition because he definitely gets really
already got it.
creepy and spooky and
we got a flashback. That doesn't count.
They
Yeah.
Sneak.
had like a
I
20-second sequence from.
I just
the
want a
river to the
whole
cave.
like like a what's the trope called? Buddy love or like buddy cop? Not buddy cop, but like
Who's
buddy.
he buddy copping with?
What's
The ring, the precious.
with
Just him
himself.
the precious down in
It's
the
him.
cave. Like,
It's just him
I
back
don't
and
know.
forth talking
Horrible
to himself.
idea.
Those are my
Like,
favorite
you thought
scenes.
that?
What do you mean? That's
Yeah.
That's a great show.
hiding from goblins, eating fish guts. I want that story.
He also eats goblins,
Oh yeah,
He does, yeah.
When they fall down the hole.
That's
but
the show that
he
I
had
watch.
never tried another hobbit before. So I'm like, well, it's good to know you weren't a cannibal before today.
Yeah, because he only killed his hobbit friend to get the ring. He
Yeah, he
didn't.
didn't
He
eat him.
didn't eat him.
I think I ran out of banners. Oh no, I have themes, symbols, and motifs.
Family lineage matters so much, so very much. Nori is the only one of the Ree brothers who gets any time, and it's basically just as a porter, and they are distantly related to Thorin somehow. Oh, my mind went somewhere else. But Biffer, Boffer, and Bomber, which Bomber was the one, that they were mean to for being portly. The only 3 not related to Thorin. and they were so mean to him. So
They were mean to him. I didn't like that.
I felt like the story and the narration and everything treated everyone related to Thor. The more related to Thorin you were, the better you were treated, and up until Thorin and his nephews died.
Yeah, but like they did kill them off. Like they did also die. So
Yeah, but they were treated well until they died, and they died a heroic death, which isn't exactly a bad thing in the era.
Didn't
that
his
the story
father
was
waste
written
away in some kind of wizard tower? So it's not all. Or was it his grandfather, the one with the map?
I don't
His
remember.
grandfather died in battle, so again, a battle death. And his father went missing, and then they found him in the tower of, or Gandalf found him in the tower of the Necromancer, and the only thing he could think of was to get the map
and the key.
and the key.
And
So,
wasn't his mind, like he found his mind ruined or something?
Yeah.
Like
yeah,
Thrain's mind was ruined.
but
So he
I
could
would
just kind of
argue,
give the map.
I would argue that those don't count for what I was talking about, because I was talking about the book and the story, and those are like things that happened before the book. Those are
Fair
backstory,
enough, yeah.
not stuff that takes place in the actual story.
But I mean, family lineage is also just where the whole story takes off. Because isn't that the
Yeah.
whole reason Bilbo is chosen? Because of his took.
Yeah, because of his grandfather and his mother, I believe. Yeah, because his mother was a Took. So we have
Yeah,
at
didn't
least
they say
one,
that they had, like,
female
elf blood
character
in their
alluded to
lineage
be
or
a
something?
badass. They potentially had a thing with a fae,
Oh yeah, that was it.
and that's what made them adventurous.
The Baggins were real respectable, but the Tooks, they were known to go on an adventure from time to time. So
I thought that was funny. The whole, the way Tolkien kind of like split Bilbo in two, and he had the two different personalities from the two different sides of his lineage, and
His Took side.
suddenly
and
the
his
Took side,
Baggins.
feels like
yeah,
having
like
some
sometimes
adventure.
Bilbo was like, "Yeah, I'm out adventuring. Like, why was I so scared of adventuring all this time? Adventuring is awesome." And other times he's like, "Oh man, I just want
Adventuring
my second breakfast. I just want my cozy hobbit hole and my fire." Like,
I wish I was a hobbit. That's the
I
mood.
know.
That's all I want out of
Being
life.
alive.
to have 8,000 meals and be
I mean, that's
cozy.
true.
What about 11 Seas?
Bard is the descendant of the King of Dale that allowed him to understand the thrush.
Yep, that was true. Yeah.
Even the Raven who translated the thrush stated
Yeah, it
who
was
his
the
father
grandson
was.
of the king of them or whatever.
Roy,
And even
right?
his wife didn't get a name. They only
No.
said, "This is my wife." Hey, so you have a third wife? Does she not get a name?
No, nobody.
Women just don't
It's
get
all-
names.
It's only your lineage through your paternal side, and if it's from your maternal side, then it's her paternal sides, like Bilbo's grandfather, his mother, and his grandfather.
Yeah. And then like Keely and Feely's grandfather, like that's how like they were so
Yeah.
like, yeah, you're my sister's sons, but at the same time, like you're
my
grandfather's
father's daughter's
grand-
sons.
Yeah.
Which for a second I was like, do they have different mothers or why? Because like in the
Like,
movie,
why are you
he was
saying
just
it like that?
Yeah, in
Father's
the movie,
daughter.
he
If
was just
only
like,
there
my
was a word for
sister's
that.
son. And I'm like, okay. In the movie, I'm like, I understand if you have multiple siblings and you're like, these are my sister's kids or these are my brother's kids. But in the book, he's like, my father's daughters, and I'm like, if only there were shortcuts to this.
Right. Only had
Mr.
they had a
Linguist.
name for that.
But that's
Yeah.
like that just demonstrates how important the bloodline and the lineages in this universe are, which is very much influenced by Tolkien's own culture. Like even if I remember right, the reason that like Bilbo and Frodo can hold out against the ring as long as they can is because they're descended from some sort of holy hobbits. I only know
Because
that because like
Lord of
Chris
the
told me
Rings-
that when we were watching Lord of the Rings, and I got so annoyed at that. I was like, "Excuse?"
takes
they can't
place, like,
just be
what?
Good people.
56 or something years before the Fellowship. Is that
60, I believe.
60? Okay, because Bilbo's 50 in this, and then he's celebrating his birthday. in the
110.
beginning of-
111th.
111.
Oh,
Sorry, I
my
couldn't
bad.
quite
He's
remember how old it was.
111st. Thank you very much.
11st. What is it? What is 11st? How many years is that?
It's 111, but they call it his 111st birthday.
It's fair.
Damn hobbits is. Gosh, I just want to live in the Shire. It just sounds so
I know.
cool.
Oh, it looks so gorgeous. If I ever get like rich, I'm gonna just make myself a hobbit hole.
Author
They
retreat
have
to
Hobbit. They have Hobbit hole Airbnbs. I think we have one near here ish.
I don't want an Airbnb. I want to live there.
I mean, that's fair.
Has anyone
I wanna
actually
be the
like
Hobbit
been
hole.
there? Has anyone been there? Like where they filmed it?
It's on
Oh,
my bucket list.
I have not. I have not left the states.
1, 2.
Not
Yeah,
for
I would
lack
also
of
be on
want.
a
Gone to
bucket list
Mexico.
dream thing.
I was about to say the
New
only
Zealand,
people
that's
that
where it
probably
was,
had
right?
a fair chance would be Stieg and
Those in Europe.
Violet.
Why does
Um,
Europe, like New Zealand, is on this side of the world?
Oh, if I knew my maps, you're right.
Because all of my
Well, we kept.
European
I think it's
friends
because we kept talking
have
about
an
Europe,
easier
Europe. And I was like, oh,
travel.
it's in Europe, duh. You're right. It's
No,
in
mine
New
was
Zealand.
my thinking was just biased from my personal experience with my European friends who can travel to other countries much easier than me. So I'm just like, they can do it easier.
Yeah, they can
They'll
do it
get there
easier.
before me. It doesn't matter where it is in the world.
Yep.
do you guys have any
Oh,
other thoughts on
except Canada.
symbols and
Might be able to
motifs or themes for that
Uh,
matter? I mean, I feel like greed is definitely a
Yes,
theme
greed is
Mhm.
bad.
because I feel like
How
there's
so,
this.
Violet?
How so? I mean, it's really subtle, so you might have missed
Very
it.
subtle.
Yeah.
I almost didn't pick up on it, to be honest.
Was it the
Imagine-
dragon, or was it the dragon sickness that Thorin got? Or was it Bilbo keeping the ring that
I
eventually
just thought
dooms
the
the entire
dragon-
world?
I just thought the dragon sickness was like a cold.
Isn't the dragon sickness because of the Arkenstone, or is that just a film thing? I cannot.
That's just a
differentiate the
film
two.
thing. The Arkenstone was just like a the Arkenstone was just a symbol of Thorin, the Durin lineage. So like his great grandfather had gotten the Arkenstone, and that was like a symbol of his right to rule the throne. And so that's why Thorin wanted it so bad, because it was like the heart of the mountain. But
Yo, I
the-
would have also been.
But all the
pissed
gold
that,
is what caused
Bilbo
the
took
dragon.
it. Like, if
sorry,
I was
say again.
Thorin, I can
Violet?
I could understand Thorin when he was pissed at Bilbo though in that moment. I mean,
Mm.
if I was Thorin, I also would have been like, "Really, bro?"
Yeah, we Capricorns, we get it.
I mean, like, obviously looking objectively at the situation, Bilbo
Well,
was,
that's a family heirloom. So
trying to
like,
solve the problem, but like I see Thorin's point of view in that moment. Like, what the heck?
like even objectively, Thorin was very valid, because that's a family heirloom. It's like the one family heirloom. He was all like, I'd give up all my treasure to get my family heirloom back. I would be real upset if anyone was hiding it. And Bilbo's just like,
Like, dude, doo-doo.
I'm tired of
that's
this,
like-
Grandpa.
and that's
about 14%.
before. That's before there even was issues with
That's why
Lake
I went
Town.
14th.
So, like, Bilbo have been holding on to that for some reason. It's like, sir.
Yeah.
I feel like
But-
mountains are a very big motif in this, because you have the Hobbit hills, like the holes are like built into the hills. You have down where the trolls are and everything, not trolls, goblins, and where we find the ring, and then you have the Lonely Mountain
Well, weren't
and where the
trolls in a
dwarves
valley?
live.
No, they were in
What
the
was that?
mountains. Oh, the trolls?
Yeah, the
I
trolls were in a
misspoke.
valley.
I meant goblins.
No, yeah, but I'm saying if the trolls were in a valley, that's mountain adjacent, because that's between two
Yeah.
mountains.
They had a troll
Well, and then there's
hole
also
with all the
those
treasure in it.
those thunder rock giant things on the side of the mountain.
Yeah, I need them to stop beating each
Yeah,
other up here.
Mountains
so
is
I can...
definitely a motif in the story and theme and symbol. It's all of
I
them.
feel like they're very much a dichotomy, because on the one hand you have home with the hobbit holes and the dwarves originally living in the mountains, but then you also have this immense danger with the goblins and then the dragon taking over the home of the dwarves. It's just very interesting.
There's a
Yeah.
movie original quote that I was very sad wasn't in the book, and it's when Bilbo tells them, because they're like, well, why did you decide to stay? And Bilbo says, well, I did think of my hobbit hole, and I do want to be home, but then I remembered you don't have a home, so I'm going to help you get your home back. But it wasn't in the book, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah, and I was like, damn it.
it's such a good movie, or such a good quote, though. Yeah, the goblins took the other home of the dwarves.
Mm-hmm.
Damn goblins.
Dwarves just couldn't catch a break.
Tolkien also has this thing where it's like evil affecting nature itself and the landscape itself. Like if you think of like Mirkwood, for example, being a forest, but not just being a forest, like being specifically Mirkwood because of what, like I think like the necromancer and its influence on the forest and its magic. And I think like the Lonely Mountain,
Yeah, I hated
the Lonely
Mirkwood.
Mountain getting like
Finish.
more fair and whatnot, like when Smog is vanquished.
Oh yeah, and they say
Stuff
like
like that.
they could hear the bird song again. You can see
Yeah.
like the nature returning.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, but then you have like Beorn, who like is so like in tune with nature, like how he was with the animals, and like how he like was trailing them. Like, don't you dare think about stealing my
Don't you let my
pony.
ponies get eaten.
Yeah. Like, I liked that.
Gandalf, are you going to give your horse back? No, I know how to take care of my horse.
He's like, no, I'm riding it back.
Yeah, but Gandalf also had some of those moments where he was like, this is not my problem. I don't have to be here. Like, I've helped you enough, guys. Like,
Y'all can
He's
deal
so
with this.
flaky.
I've got a necromancer to go deal with.
I will show up at the exact moment of convenience when you
I
need me
think-
again.
I could be wrong with my understanding of wizards, but I think that's also in part because wizards are kind of like demigods in this universe. So they're not supposed to directly interfere, and Gandalf is just bad at not interfering.
Mm-hmm.
So like he's already doing more than he's supposed to be doing, but his attitude towards it is very amusing.
Yeah.
For me.
I love
Anyway.
Gandalf.
I love all Gandalf Merlian type wizards.
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, like a wise old mentor type of a trope. It's
Mhm.
No, I mean like the batshit ones that are all like, yeah, I'm super powerful, but this is your problem. Let me just go over here. I love those ones.
yeah, snarky Gandalf was my favorite Gandalf, to be fair.
Do you guys feel that Tolkien did enough to develop Gandalf in The Hobbit?
Actually, I wanted to link that podcast episode from Brandon Sanderson's podcast where he did that one. Is Gandalf a Mary Sue? I will link it after.
Gandalf is 100% a Mary Sue, but that's his purpose. He's a demigod. He's
Yeah.
like, just because a character is a Mary Sue doesn't mean it's a bad character. It also doesn't mean that they should be nerfed because there are places for overpowered characters in stories. So, like, I'll fight anybody who says otherwise. But yeah, he's Ganondorf. Gandalf, not the combination of Gandalf and the Zelda villain. He's super powerful, but he's not human either. That's the thing. He's sorry. I forget what he is, but he's like the equivalent of a demigod, and like I think he gets in trouble with the other. That could be a movie only thing, but I think he gets in trouble with the Sauron the White for interfering
Saruman?
for interfering as much as he does, because he's not supposed to interfere with the lower races, right?
That's
But,
a
like,
movie thing only.
Okay.
But
So then let me.
in the book, I find it funny, like whenever they like didn't need, well, whenever they want to put the group in trouble, Gandalf has to go and solve some side business, and then
Yes.
whenever they're in too much trouble, Gandalf will just like, And on the hill on the third day was Gandalf, and he just fooled all the trolls, and everything just sorted itself out.
Oh, but you knew when Gandalf left them at Mirkwood when he's like, "I'm not going in there with you. You guys stay on the path." And you knew, like, oh no, they're not going to stay on the path.
They're not going to stay on the path. This is going to go
They
poorly.
can't watch themselves for 5 minutes, Gandalf. They need you as their babysitter. Like,
Yeah.
I felt like that whole thing was sort of symbolic of
A parent letting a
like
child go do their own thing.
like addiction, right? Because
Mirkwood.
you know, like so they get into Mirkwood and they're staying on the path and everything, and both Bjorn and Gandalf, two rather reputable, you know, figures, have both told them under no circumstances to stay on the path. They've said stay on the path and everything, and you know, the dwarves and Bilbo, they know to stay on the path, and then it's just a matter of like, what is the threshold where, you know, you cross over that threshold and it's just like you're not going to listen and you're going to do the thing and you're going to sort of like give in to the temptation, even if it's because you are, you know, starving and whatnot. But I just thought that was like kind of allegorical or something to addiction, and just like, where's that threshold? And then, you know, they of course reach the threshold and they do go off the path, and it's very, very bad and all that.
So for me, that very much felt like an allegory to the Lotus Eaters and the River Styx, because when Bumper fell into the Black River and he came out, he lost his memory. And in the River Styx, that's where you're cleansed of your memories of your previous life so that you can like move on. And then the Lotus Eaters is like people who eat the lotuses in the myth. They like lose track of all time and purpose, and they just kind of live in this ecstasic state. And so you like have to stop eating the lotuses to leave the place of the Lotus Eaters, but people don't stop eating the lotuses because they like being happy and they like being in that state, and they don't even realize that they lose track
wasn't that
of
the
time and
same
everything.
thing that was in Percy Jackson?
Yes, Percy Jackson's casino is the
It's
story.
almost like Percy Jackson took from Greek myths.
No, it's just that was also a book club thing, and I was like, wait a minute, this is when they were in that casino or that like fun
the
house
Lotus
thing.
Eaters. So, and
like,
that's what Mirkwood reminded me of a lot, which the Lotus Eaters is probably all, like talking about opium, because if I remember, opium was a thing in ancient Greece and Rome. But hold on, child, I'm trying to remember my train of thought. But yeah, so also just knowing that Tolkien took from a lot of other mythologies or was inspired by them, that's what it kind of that they were like going into the underworld and had to be like reborn in a way, especially since that's where, without Gandalf, Bilbo came into his own there. He's the one who killed the spiders and who saved everybody. And Gandalf was very much like, this is my burglar, take care of him, don't you let anything happen to my burglar. But then like Bilbo's the one who takes care of everybody else in Mirkwood. And also whenever somebody falls asleep, they have a very peaceful dream and they just want to go back to sleep and live in the dream because it's better than living in reality. And that,
yeah, Bilbo, he really saved their asses several times.
Oh yeah.
Also, can you imagine just roaming around an elf palace invisible for weeks? I was like, my dude, where are you sleeping? You just find an empty room and crash
I know, like,
there?
the introvert in me like loved the idea of like, I don't have to like interact with anybody.
No, but like you have to make sure nobody finds it. Like you can't lay in a bed, right? Because what if somebody comes in there and sees the dent of your invisible body sleeping there?
Or it's their bed.
Yeah,
It could
or
be
it's
some
their bed. Some
crazy
some
twist on
guard.
like the one bed trope.
some guard is like really tired and they come to their room and then they like go to crash on their bed and they just like because they're asleep they feel somebody there. It's like, oh, it's my boo who's come to spend the night with me, and they just cuddle with invisible Bilbo.
Oh, I see. I would like to see that same trope done, except with Gollum and the
No.
goblin.
Just Gollum with the ring on, like roaming around the little goblin place.
Just looking through
See?
the
We need
goblins
the Gollum
leftovers.
story.
Yeah, you guys are gonna push me to write fanfic. Weird Gollum goblin fanfic.
Gollum stories.
I'm gonna rewrite The Hobbit the way you did with the Hunger Games.
Yeah, for sure. It's just all gonna be Gollum talking to the ring alone.
Definitely
Yeah.
needed more of that in this
So-
book.
He
Introvert
looks
stream.
so sad in the movie when Bilbo like is about
Oh
to
my
kill
gosh,
him
I
and he's
could
got the-
cry.
every time I see it, I'm like, Bilbo, leave him alone. I don't
I know,
care
his
that it causes
face.
a lot of problems later. Leave him alone.
I know his little
He's
face.
so sad.
Yeah, Gollum becomes, I feel like, a very interesting character in the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Mm,
So
yeah.
in The Hobbit, you just really just get a toe dipped into him. Like, you don't get to see all the...
I appreciate that apparently the original version had him friendlier and then he was rewritten to be meaner so that he could be an antagonist in Lord of the Rings or something like that. I'm sure Stieg or Chris can correct
Chris
the
did
context.
say that earlier, that
Yeah.
that's how old Michael was.
You read the friendly version.
I feel like I don't have any other themes, symbols, or motifs. That I can think of.
Did you want to try to rank the dwarves?
Yeah. Does anybody have a favorite off the top of your head?
I can say
Oh,
that
Kiwi for sure.
Nori
Kiwi-
and Ori should be at the bottom as they did nothing.
I'm gonna
Owen and
go.
Glowen are also pretty low.
I'm gonna
Who
go
was
like Beefer, or is it Beaver? Beefer?
Biffer.
Biffer and Bo.
Biffer.
Because he's just like not even there, pretty much.
Can anyone
If I-
name all the
Invisible, but
dwarves?
not in a good way.
Well, I have it written down, but yes, I
Oh.
practiced like the last days. Like I was just constantly naming them out loud, and my partner is like, "Stop it! Stop just randomly naming dwarves."
I have them all in my notes along with their hood colors. The
Yeah, I have
belts
the hood
that
colors
were
as well.
revealed. I unfortunately don't know Dory, Nori, Ori, Owen, or Glowin's belt colors because Tolkien just said gold and silver belts.
I feel like we have to rank Glowin moderately high because he is Gimli's dad, and we all love Gimli. So
I'm for Danny's.
Okay.
I think Dory should be low.
Why
Yeah.
Dory?
He's just annoying.
But
He's
he's
not
got
getting
a
what it needs to get.
personality.
No, that's because it's okay. Uptight doesn't
But he had
necessarily mean it's a personality.
See, I think I like
Yes,
Bombor is
can
one
you
of my
get?
favorites.
Can you give one characteristic for Ori or Nori? Can you give even
There.
one? Because I can
They
give
are.
3 for Dory. Therefore, I think he should be at least above Nori and Ori.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
Ori
think Ori
is
needs to
also
be
just
pretty
one of
low.
those ones that like, did Ori ever do anything other than just being
No.
a rhyming
Well,
name in the list?
He's the youngest dwarf, so he's gonna go along with what everyone else is
Wait,
doing.
I thought
He's
Killy
most-
and Philly were the
Killy and Philly
youngest.
are the
Keely and
youngest,
Philly are
'cause-
the youngest.
Yeah, because it constantly says that because they're the
Oh, the
youngest,
list
they
I'm
get made
looking
to
at.
do everything.
The list I was looking at saying that he was that
Well,
Ori was the youngest.
This
must
is
be a
not
wrong
backed
list.
up by canon.
No, then y'all are
Mine-
probably
I
right.
only had listed that Balin was old.
Balin
he-
is old.
Is
Balin
he
was
the old
old.
one? And Dwalin is his brother. That's all I
I
got
like
listed.
Balin
like
and
Balin.
Balin.
I like
Okay,
them too.
Which one? One of
Balin.
them is the record keeper, right? I don't remember which one,
I think that's Balin.
but like
He
in the
gave
Lord of the
Manfred
Rings,
red wine.
you
Okay,
see
that's
one of their like
Balin's the one that had died. That like they come across his grave in the Lord of the Rings.
it's Balin. Okay,
Yeah, that's Balin's grave.
He's
I knew it was
balling.
one
And
of
he's
them.
the
It's
record
rhymes,
keeper
because
because
rhymes mess with me so much.
I only remember that Balin is the record keeper because he died in Lord of the Rings, and when Gimli finds like his uncle Balin's tomb or something like that, I was like, no, not the old one.
Yeah.
I like him.
Yeah.
So
No. Damn it, dwarves. Yeah, Bombur is
Yeah, I
probably
like
my
Balin.
favorite. Even though I said his only personality trait is being fat, at least he has a personality.
he
I
has
like
more
that
than that
personality,
though.
okay?
He's like haughty and boisterous, and he's actually kind of like not necessarily charismatic, but he was funny a couple times.
He's funny, yeah.
He was funny a couple times.
He,
It's more
you know
than a lot
what?
Which
of
is more
them,
than you can
okay,
say for
Danny?
most of the dwarves.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
These are not high standards.
There were
You know
so
what?
many.
Even though they were only ever picking on him about his weight, he at least brought up the morale of the group.
He was like, I would equate him to like a haughty, arrogant Santa Claus type person. Cause there's one time when he's like, I ain't climbing down there. That rope isn't gonna hold me. Fuck y'all. I'm staying here with the ponies. And then yeah, there's just a couple times he reminded me of one of my uncles and my papa, so
Yeah. It was a lot, though, the dwarves, to be fair.
there are 14.
And to be
of
fair,
them.
I'm surprised that they had kept their numbers as long as they did, that they weren't just dying off along the way. Because, like,
That would have been a
I'm
much
like,
sadder book if they were
I know,
killed
but
off
I was
along the
thinking,
way.
like, statistically, how the hell did they all get, like,
I think
out
it'd be
of the
more
goblins? How did they
realistic.
all get out of Mirkwood? Like, because
I
remember, like,
think
it was, like, pitch black dark. I was like, how the hell did they all get out of there? There's no way they didn't at least
Because the
lose, like,
spiders
I think
gathered
that's
them.
I think that's the sort of classic way of storytelling. You know, the old way.
That was
I know,
Well,
but
that was one of the things I
Nowadays,
had recommended for a thing on Instagram was just like cast size. Like, was the size of this cast necessary? Because I very much feel it was not.
I think it
It
was just
didn't
part
even.
of the joke. It just seemed like,
Yeah.
you know, the rhyming names, the listing them off, like them coming out in twos to Bayor, and like,
There's
Oh my God,
also
this is
the
so
part with Bjorn where they're like hold on, I have because I was so amused by the reactions I'm trying to find. Oh yeah. So like Gandalf is like, you know, I have a friend or two, and Bjorn is like, there's only one there, and he's kind of small. And then he's like, oh yeah, you know, let me start telling you this story. And then Thorin and Dory come out, and he like says something about several friends, and Thorin and Dory come out, and he's like, oh, since when is several two? And then it's like Nori and Ori come out. He's like, do you call six a troop? And Dalin, Ballin, and he's like, a dozen? This is the first time I've heard 8 call a dozen. Here comes Feely and Keely. And then Gandalf's like, yeah, and there's 14. And he's like, 14? Sir, you just told me you had 10, and then you lost one. That's not 14. I can math. And then he's like, yeah. And then Owen and Glowin come out. And then he's like, and then we were all 15 of us up in a tree. And he's like, don't pretend goblins cannot count. You were at 12. And I'm like, this man is paying a lot of attention here. He's been counting.
I do feel like the whole party brought the best out of Bjorn. I feel like.
He seemed like a man who's been very
You know,
lonely,
but-
and now he's happy to be
Yeah.
social again.
He's the last of his people. I'd be lonely too.
OMG,
fair.
we should totally matchmake
He
him
had
with Gollum.
descendants,
We should
though.
set them up.
Violet, no!
Straight
He
to
has
Did
been.
I kick you from your own stream?
Lonely Boys Club.
That is some AO3 fanfic I will not be reading. Thank you very much.
He canonically had kids,
The
so he
one.
hooks up with somebody. I don't know who.
It was Gollum.
Oh, my precious.
Sorry to make it weird.
On that note,
It's not the weirdest I've been involved in. You're fine.
Oh, what about this?
Yes.
Like favorite part of the book.
Hold on, they all blurred together for me.
I think
I
said
like
mine
the
already,
last
the riddle.
line. The last
Oh,
line
yeah.
just ties it up, and like it's so. Hold up. Why are my pages sticking?
I
Where he
have to
just
go.
says, "You're a very fine person, Mr. Baggins, and I'm very fond of you. But you are only quite a little fellow in a wide world, after all." And Bilbo says, "Thank goodness." If that's not a mood.
He's
Yeah,
like,
I think it's just very, very nicely wrapped up at the end, and it made me happy to just be back at home in the Hobbit hole, all nice and cozy.
I think the part with Bjorn is my favorite. I have a bias for the werebear, so
I think the Elven Hall is my favorite. I enjoy that. And the barrel ride.
Oh, the barrels are a good
Oh.
all
time.
right, it is so good. I will say I am impressed that the dwarves were able to just stay in those barrels and not get caught, even though several of them were waterlogged and almost died.
Or actually, in the beginning when they're all gathered in Bilbo's house, like when you're like on the precipice
That's
of
so
adventure.
cozy.
That
And
is
I love
just
that.
so good.
they're sitting there demanding food, and he's just like, he's just an autopilot sitting there getting everybody's stuff
Oh,
done.
I love when he's like, when it's only the first couple of them, and Bilbo's like, and I'll do the respectable thing as host, and maybe not have a piece of cake. And then, like, little does he know, like, there's more
He's
coming,
gotta-
and he's gonna go down to the stores, get all his cakes.
He's,
Like,
he's like, why does Gandalf have an itinerary of the stock of my food, bro?
And every knock, he's like, "This has to be Gandalf now."
oh,
Okay.
also that
Yeah,
little song
it's
they sing,
him.
like, that's what Bilbo Baggins hates, like breaking
Oh
the
my
plates
gosh,
and
Bilbo
everything.
Baggins hates is my favorite song ever.
That's
I
I
what
forgot
love
about
Bilbo
that
is
one.
I have
in.
a note that song is so rude, causing Bilbo more anxiety as they're cleaning.
I love it.
I
so
love the
much.
song though.
Oh, see,
It's
I could do
good.
also just a whole sitcom of the dwarves in the whole.
That's the only reason to have all 14 of them is for the comedic value.
Yeah, look, Rings of Power. Like, okay, I know they didn't actually have the rights to the main properties, but like those are the spin-offs that I would have would have liked to see. The weird Gollum spin-off and just
I
dwarves
quite like
talking
Rings
shit
of
about
Power.
the Fire. Oh, I
I
gave
haven't
up
seen
after
it
2
yet.
episodes.
I will also say that I like how Tolkien did switch up which dwarves he like paired together or which dwarves he had go do things, with like a little exception for Fili and Keely, because like I was trying to keep track of if certain dwarves were constantly paired together or not, and other than Keely and Fili, it actually like switches around like who has to go anywhere with Bonfer. He's like always last, but which he complains about. But who gets paired with him changes out. So I was like, well, at least you're not just sticking to the same formula. So I guess if more of the dwarves had personality, this could give me insight into their relationships.
Yeah. I mean, do we have
Also,
any
name
closing
wise,
thoughts?
Name wise, I feel mildly betrayed because Owen and Glowin are brothers, and Ori, Dory, and Nori are brothers. Fili and Keely are brothers. Balin and Dwalin are brothers. But Bonfer and Boffer are brothers, but Biffer is their cousin. And of the names, Biffer and Boffer are closer. So I was like, Tolkien, how could you do that, sir? Why would you make it confusing like that? Why can't they just all be cousins? But that was all.
Yeah, I think this was a cozy read to end out the
I know, I loved
year.
it. I personally like December time, especially like the week after Christmas, is like my time for like all things Lord of the Rings, all things The Hobbit. So for me, I've always considered it kind of like a winter, beginning of January type feel, because it's like you're starting a journey. And so I was beyond happy when you said that we were doing The Hobbit for December.
There's also a Yuletide when Gandalf and Bilbo are going back to the Hobbit hole. They spend Yuletide with Bjorn.
And
I thought that was super cute.
Yeah, that's true. I do remember.
Yeah, I
that.
noticed that.
I have to say, like, there was just something about reading this that, like, I couldn't help but, like, the book club was called The Nostalgia Train. Like, just the word nostalgia just drenched this book, just because it's so old that so, like, several different generations, like, grew up with this story, and I feel like it's not going anywhere. Like, it just
Well, that and
it's
I'm
so
sure
like
like each of
ingrained.
us I'm sure like each of us can think of another book that we love and that we've read that has taken so much inspiration from this book. So that makes it nostalgic just in itself because it's built so many things off of it that we now like love those other things too.
Yeah, that's definitely true. You know, just a fun little
Yeah.
adventure.
I like that we get the return journey because so many books will have like the big climactic moment and then like one or two chapters of resolution, and you don't like
Mm-hmm.
get clarity on everything. But here you have like Bilbo going back and seeing all of his relatives taking all of his stuff out of his house, and you get to see him and Gandalf hanging out at the end. It just
And he
feels
was
like full
and
circle.
and Balin came to visit to update him
Mm-hmm.
on it. So we also know how the others progressed.
And the return journey also lets the story span an entire year.
Oh, what
Here's
are we getting?
the final drawing.
Oh, that's so cute.
Oh, that's so cute.
I was about to ask if the kid was Frodo, and then I realized it was Bilbo.
Bilbo. And then I presume
Um,
Dwalin. And then
yes.
G, as I call him
Yeah, Balin.
affectionately. Big G.
Big G, yeah.
Not God, but Gandalf.
The G Man.
Yeah, Gandalf, he's a real one. He shows up just when he's needed.
He
And
shows up
not
when he
when he's
needs to.
expected.
I mean, he
Yeah.
was dealing with a necromancer.
Oh,
So
I wanted to I wanted to point out the cultural quotes that Tolkien had created because I thought they were such a nice world building touch, and it's something that I think like fantasy writers can look at and like see how he does it. Like I think it's very beneficial for fantasy writers, and I just really love when writers do this. So there's like compliments to hobbits apparently is may the hair never fall from your toes, and like all of the special the like customized farewells, like the eagles are wherever you fare till
Yeah.
till your ears receive you at the journey's end, may the wind under your wings bear you where the sun sails and the moon walks. uh a bird, the raven about the thresh, says may his feathers never die, which like when birds get old they start molting, so that he's wishing him a long life, and I thought that was cute. As fierce as a dragon in a pinch, may your beard grow ever longer. Though this was supposed to be like the context of the book says this was an insult that Frodo, or not Frodo, that Bilbo was throwing at the dwarves. I take it as like a sweet summer child thing where it could be either, because it sounds more like a compliment to me. And then also, may your beards never grow thin. May your memory never fade is like a general mourning thing. To the Wood Elf King, there was merry be the greenwood while the world is yet young, merry be all your folk. And specifically to Gandalf, there's may you ever appear where you are most needed and least expected. And then for Bilbo, may the Elf King said, may your shadow never grow less, or stealing will be too easy.
I
And
remember that one.
I really enjoyed those ones.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I was so surprised at like, because like I said before, I didn't read this in English, so like I was surprised like how accessible so much of the writing was and how fun and lighthearted it was. Like even like in the beginning, like the good morning, like the scene with
That's just
Gandalf when he first showed up,
Mhm.
like
Right.
it was just cute. Like I don't know.
what's so good about it.
Do they do the thing in German where they translate the names to German like vibes?
Yeah, I think some of them.
Yeah, because
do.
they do that in Norwegian. So like all Like the names and stuff are different in Norwegian than they are in English.
What are some of them?
Baggins, for example. What would instead of Baggins, it's like pocket cozy or something pocket mild. I think would be a direct translation.
Huh.
So his name is Bilbo Pocket Cozy.
Why they gotta do Bilbo like that?
Oh my!
Baggins. Baggins
So, yeah.
definition.
A dog.
Well, Baggins apparently means a person who was a peddler or a great traveler. So
There's a lot of care taken into the names of
Pocket
the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings characters. So
Bilbo
I
Pocket
feel like translating them into other languages makes sense because technically the names in The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings are not the actual characters' names, and they're translations that
Yeah.
Tolkien did. So like Bilbo's real name is Bilba. That's the
Bilbo.
only one I remember, but like none of their names are actually what you read. And like Eowyn and Eomer from Rohan, their names in their original language start with L. And like
Put
Yeah,
it like
because
that.
isn't
this
Tolkien
man
like
went
a big
wild on the
linguist,
lore.
language nerd?
Mm-hmm.
Baggins can also be somebody who is openly hostile or distrustful.
So
Full of
normally,
dope.
after book club books, a lot of the books we read are, series, and then we do buddy reads. I mean, is anybody going to read Lord of the Rings trilogy now? Come on, guys.
I already did this year, so no.
I committed to doing it because I'm going to do a Tolkien Let's Talk with one of my friends on my channel after so I will be at some point, yes.
I don't know. I mean, I have them, but I don't know if I'm ever going to read them.
Lord of
I'll
the
read
Rings
them
is
at some
thick.
point, but
And
I
I've
will
read
say
it,
I've
so
never-
I'm not sure if I want to waste time reading it again.
I've never tried to read The Lord of the Rings before, so who knows? Maybe I'll enjoy it more.
I actually don't know the opening line to Lord of the Rings.
It's like a prologue, like right this big, right? An appendix of the history of hobbits, right? Or something like that. The real opening line, I have no idea. I've never gotten past the prologue.
Watching
Yeah.
The Hobbit with children who have never consumed Lord of the Rings material before is really interesting because like they were going, why is he talking about 60 years ago? Is he 60 years old? What's he writing? What's a hobbit? And then it's like trying to talk to them. It's like, well, he's only supposed to be like 3 feet tall. And they're all 4 foot something. So you're actually as tall as these people. And they're like, what?
Skipping the forward, skipping the prologue. Book 1, Chapter 1. When Mr. Bilbo Baggins of Bag End announced that he would shortly be celebrating his 11th birthday with a party of special magnificence, there was much talk and excitement in Hobbiton.
That's a boring first line.
It's no more like
In a
boring
hole
than in all in the
ground
ground
there
there lived a
lived a
hobbit.
hobbit. That's a
Yeah.
perfect first line.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it is an iconic first line in a whole.
Because like that's
in the ground.
memorable. Like no one remembers something about his 11th something birthday.
Okay, but controversial opinion. It's memorable because it's culturally relevant and memorable, not because the line itself is actually that memorable.
No, it's a good opening line, I think.
I like it.
I like it.
I completely missed it because my boyfriend brought the cat in front of the camera, and I'm pretty sure Violet was the only one who saw. Oh, Chloe, why are you screeching my chair?
For clarity, I'm not saying it's a bad opening line. I'm just saying if I knew absolutely nothing about The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings, and I read a book that started up with in a hole there lived a hobbit, it would just is an opening line. It wouldn't like affect me positively or negatively. I'd just keep reading.
Yeah.
But like
No,
I
because
like it.
because you know what a hobbit is and because you know what the story is, it's like, oh, this is such a nice introduction into the Hobbit. But it's like, if you don't know, then it's okay. I find the 11th birthday line of equivalent skill and intrigue. So if anything, that interests me more because I don't know what 11th is, and I would try to figure that out.
Immediately Google.
Immediately Google. I'd like read a paragraph. If I didn't know what it was by the end of the context of the first paragraph, I would Google.
Has anyone seen Brooklyn Nine-Nine? A little digression here. Does this not look like Charles?
It does. The guy in the background, right?
Yeah, Bilbo?
Yeah.
No, Frodo?
Is that the
Oh, they did Frodo dirty.
Charles?
Oh, if you don't like this one, where did you say Two Towers? It's some proper gay shit.
Propagation.
Yeah, this is the same.
Oh.
This is the same as the cover set that I have.
So fun thing.
Who are they supposed to be?
Legolas
That's
and Gimli.
Gimli.
Ops.
Oh, that's supposed
Legolas
to be
does
Legolas?
not look like that. That is
Legolas
not
looks
like.
like that
That's
looks
not
like
Legolas. I knew that was
Ken doll
Gimli, but
version of Legolas.
And then
What we
this
have
is Return of
here
the King,
is
which
a
is so
breakdown of
generic.
beauty standards in the different decades.
Like, how is this Aragorn, the most sexiest man in the franchise?
yeah,
Again,
right.
what we have
And here
here
he looks like
is-
Michael Scott from The Office.
He looks like if Michael Scott and,
And who's-
Nicolas Cage
who's
had
this?
a baby.
Nicolas
This
Cage
is-
was almost Aragorn. He was the
Imagine.
first choice, but had casting like he was in a
He
different
would've
movie at the same time,
And
and
who's
so that's
this?
why
Is
he
he's
this
a more
would
Legolas?
have this cover.
Or is
That's
this a beautiful
Legolas,
young
but that's
woman?
there's no women in the book, so that has to be Legolas.
That has to be
Oh,
Legolas.
Eowyn begs to differ.
Oh wait,
fair,
that's
but
oh wait,
Lewis
sorry, that's
Garth
Lord of the Rings. Never mind, never
Yeah,
mind.
is
Lord
Return
of
of
the
the
Rings
King.
gets at least a
No,
few.
you're right. I was thinking the Hobbit. You're right.
Yeah, at least she gets a mention.
But isn't she dark? Is she dark haired in the book, or is that only in
no
the?
Oh, that's
idea.
beyond
in
my
the movie?
knowledge.
I don't remember so. But if that's Legolas, I mean, they at
I
least
mean,
did him
it's
a little
gotta
better.
be, but it reminds me
That's
of
a
that
woman.
woman who plays in that show, which is a great explanation.
Go
Yeah.
on.
We all know
What's
who you
her
mean.
name? Did you ever see that show, Heroes? Is that what it's called?
Oh, Hayden Panettiere.
No, not Hayden Panettiere. The one that's a stripper and gets an ability. She does like cam shows in her barn or garage or whatever it is.
Heroes.
And what's her ability?
I don't.
What's her stripper
remember.
ability?
Her name is her name Nikki Sanders, like the character's name.
How no? Let's see. Heroes
'Cause-
TV show. The actress is called Aldi Larcher, which is very unfortunate.
Oh, I know who that is. Yep.
Yeah, so that's what it's giving me. Aldi Larcher vibes.
I
Oh,
did
yeah, I
find the
see
right
it.
person.
Fair enough.
But yeah, that's my copy of Lord of the Rings. Should I read them? No.
I think
I
this
mean,
is fascinating because I'm sure the beauty standards of the time the books were made that those were very handsome men.
I personally
But-
think that all Tolkien should be consumed in audiobook just so you can put it on faster speed.
No, I don't really compute with audiobook. 1973, so this is some 70s stuff.
Yes, and that's
Yeah, I
some
understand
very
that. If you
70s hero aesthetics. Except the Aragorn. That one I still don't see the 70s portraying as an attractive male lead.
not enough flowy hair.
I think it's a helmet with the wings on, to be fair.
To be very
It looks like a dingus.
I was talking about the nose shape.
No.
I didn't even notice it has like wings like coming off his head.
No shape be representative of a decade.
You know that typical 70s nose shape. He does not present
Look.
it.
Here's the thing, all right? I realize out of context sometimes it sounds bad, but I learned a lot about the aesthetics of Hollywood because like before I wanted to be a writer of novels, I just wanted to be a storyteller. So I know a lot about a lot of different things, including the beauty standards of Hollywood from like the 20s up to like 2010. After 2010, I don't know what Hollywood's been doing. But up until then, I can tell you like what the average beauty standards was. And for men, it was like a thicker nose right here that like more tapered down. And like I'm not the only one who notices these things, because you can like find compilations of like starlets and stuff throughout a decade, and they'll like put their faces together and they all have like the same facial shape features and stuff. So for a male lead, he needs to have a stronger nose, and he does not. At least in the 70s. They were all about the strong nose, the square jaw, and the flowing hair.
I still can't believe how they did movie Thorin. That little nose. How dare they? I'm gonna be salty about that forever, guys.
Does anyone read Runic? What is this at the bottom? Does anyone read that?
No.
I like how I'm looking closer as if I would know what that means.
I did the same thing. I was like, knowing full well I don't read Runic, getting closer in my screen anyway.
Do you have your alphabet manual there, Casey?
My copy also has. Steve and I have these same like 1970s.
Yeah, I have the same
copy.
one in The Hobbit. It's one of my favorite Hobbit covers. It is absolutely rank. Do you know how much a first edition of The Hobbit goes for?
Can I
A
guess?
bajillion.
10,000.
Oh. What am I looking at? Is it the same text? But no,
one's
I think
pretty.
like 250, 300,000 pounds.
Hui.
Excuse me as I go convert that.
I
think
love
it's
this
like-
cover with just the ring. I find that so like.
That's kind of boring though.
I like it.
I like it. Okay, talking about symbols. Come on, the ring is a symbol of
Yes.
corruption and invisibility.
I like my hunched little Gandalf.
Oh, wait,
I
I
like
wanna
this
make
one
yours
with
big.
Smaug on because
Hold on.
Oh.
Where's Danny?
yeah, that's also.
Oh,
a
I
cute
like
one.
that one with the Shire too. Okay.
And I
now
like this
Steve.
one with Smaug on because this is just nostalgia.
Oh yeah, I
Mhm.
like the covers that have smog. as
Have you
well.
seen the Latin one with Smaug on it, Violet? This is
No.
not
Steve,
on
you
the
show
book
off
club.
your collection.
Yes, just pull them all out.
Hobbit show and tell.
Okay. This is going to be boring for everyone else but me.
Boring.
This is
Well,
my
Michael-
edition.
Oh, you also have a smog.
Oh, that's. I
like
think
it.
it's the same one that I had.
Yeah,
I have
it would
this
been
one in
impossible
Norwegian,
to do a-
which is
a
weird
cover
because it
wars.
looks like Bilbo's enjoying something that I'm not sure what he's enjoying.
An
The
invisible
smell
golem.
of breakfast.
Smell of second breakfast.
Yeah.
Those cakes he
that's-
can have now that he cleaned up.
A Norwegian one, and this is a Danish one. I think this is Mirkwood,
Oh, that's
but
pretty.
Gandalf is there, so that makes no sense.
That seems like a communication thing.
Smaug, this is Swedish.
Ooh,
Ooh, I
it's a
like
nice
that one.
I like the text in the back.
Yeah,
This is
that one's
the
cool.
modernized classic cover.
Yeah,
I
that's the
love
one
that
I
one
used for
personally.
the book club.
This is one that Anne-Sophie sent me from Germany, which I think is adorable.
Why does he have butterfly wings?
I don't know, why does it look so derpy? This is Smaug, by the way, if
I
anyone
love
was wondering
him.
what this was.
Oh my
They
god.
look like an alligator, like
That's
more.
not
And then
Smaug,
this is
that's a
Hobbit on
friend.
top, I think.
Oh, it has his
Oh.
full name. It doesn't. Well, one R is shortened. Interesting.
That is weird.
This is the
And
Spanish
Sophie coming in
version,
clutch.
which is a Tolkien drawing from the original book.
Oh, nice.
Ooh.
Original cover. Where's the good ones though? The juicy ones. Did I stack them all here? Oh, sorry, dragon.
Bye.
He demolishes his
Sorry,
whole
Smaug.
book base.
This is my favorite cover, and this is the Finnish one. I think this is so cool.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So excited
I
to
like
burn them
him.
alive.
It is drawn by the same woman who does Moomin. I don't know if anyone knows that.
Oh, I can totally tell.
Yeah, this is
That
drawn
has
by
the
Tove
same
Jansson.
vibes.
Like, isn't he adorable? Hello?
Yes.
And the little dwarves here. And what I presume is Doll in the middle there.
You mean Santa?
Also, I just want to add real quick because I remembered earlier. I love how they set small on lay down, just let them put them in the set. Free mountain and nothing.
This is the Spanish version with Smaug on it. Oh, can you focus?
Focus.
There you go.
Mm.
Do you think it's really
Is that
pretty?
Bilbo bent over on the edge there?
I think that's supposed to be invisible Bilbo. And it's
Why
like
is he at a
magic.
right angle?
I don't know. He's in the cloud of
Because he's-
invisibility.
Still in a cup.
Also, he-
Or maybe it's farting. I don't know.
that's a hat. That's not a cup.
He has a hat too. What?
It's a communication issue.
I don't know why he's in a fart bubble.
I don't know where that copy is. I had a Latin one with a real pretty cover, but she has gone missing.
Oh, okay.
I love all of them.
I
It's
enjoyed
very
the
nice.
Hobbit,
Woot,
you can
woot.
tell.
I only have this one, which has the really nice like schmiegel.
I like how he's just there in a
Oh,
circle.
mine didn't even
Yeah.
have that.
You
Doomed
just-
Schmeagol.
He's just there in a little
Surprise Schmeagol.
circle, nomming on a fish.
Yeah, they're like, we need to put the star of the show on the cover.
Yeah, I think it might
We're all
be
here
because
for.
it's narrated by Andy. So
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Like I was
I have
so
this
excited
comic
for
version.
the Andy
can
Circus
zoom
version,
in
and then
on,
I totally. Oh,
Zoom
that's
in
cute!
on Bilbo
Oh
there. He looks like a
Looks like a
toddler for
little
some reason.
boy.
my gosh, I love that Bilbo. That's a cute Bilbo.
That's cute.
Yeah, this is a 50-year-old man, Violet.
Yeah, I'm also old, so age
I mean,
appropriate.
He has it right. We're not true adults until 50.
That's fair.
as an ancient immortal, and my fellow ancient immortal Michael can attest to that, you do need to be at least 50 to be an adult.
Oh, here it is.
Hence
Never
why
mind.
Michael still hangs out with children because he's not an adult yet.
Ooh, it's like a mosaic.
Oh,
Yeah,
that
but I
is
think
like a
it's just
mosaic.
the first cover because
Cool.
there is little Bilbo farting in the corner there. So
Oh, you're right.
Oh, he's cut off.
Cut
yeah.
his booty
Yeah.
off.
It's just like a
When
stylized
you-
version.
When you touch it, is it a different texture? Like,
No, it's just a glossy cover, but it's
Mean.
a different texture. There was something in the. Do you see that guy in the background? What is this? Oh. Is that a dwarf, maybe? Because that's definitely a sweater.
Is that just like some armor or mail hanging up or something?
is that? I think that's the elf prince Mithril.
Oh, that
I
could
think
be.
it's just cover designers not
Yeah,
actually reading the book.
Not knowing.
Like,
That's exactly. They're like, there's a dragon in this story.
Also,
Could be a
back-
communication issue.
the backhanded compliment the Elf King gives Bilbo when he's all like, "There." I'm gonna paraphrase, but it's like, "You deserve to wear that elf prince armor better than a lot of people who would look better in it than you."
Yeah,
I was like, "Sir."
I remember that line.
Yeah, it looks like it's just armor on the wall.
oh,
yeah,
okay.
that's probably the Mithril
Mhm.
then.
Yeah, and you can see better in that non-mosaic version.
Anyway, weird flex, but okay.
Let's wrap it up, guys. Does anybody have any
Sounds great.
final thoughts, self promo, things to say?
I
I'm
did
just
my
glad we
holiday
read
pass
this.
yesterday. It's fun to rewatch. Sorry, go ahead, Danny.
I'm just really glad we read this. It was a really fun
too.
time. It's a perfect way to end the year.
It is very.
And I'm glad we're starting next year with the short book.
Which is. I forgot already.
The Bad Beginnings.
Series of unfortunate
Yes, the
events.
first book is only like 132 pages long.
Yeah, I wanted a short book because it's NaNoWriMo, so we don't do books on nano events, but since this is not really nano, I mean, we do in January books.
What do you
and I
mean
just-
not really nano? Wait until Catherine hears about this.
So I'll finish an hour before the stream.
Yeah, it's literally that's how long it's gonna take you.
And I also loved the weird irony of like starting the year off with a book called The Bad Beginning. So, yeah. So,
That series is so depressing.
It's one of
I
my
haven't
favorites.
read it.
The one with unfortunate events in it? Are you sure?
The one that
Oh.
starts off with literally saying, "If you want a happy book, put this one down and pick something else up."
I know
Yeah.
that one of
Well-
the characters is named Violet. I know that. So,
Now, full disclosure, I'll be a first time reader again.
Yep, I haven't read it.
I'll be like an
I-
8th time reader, so
I'm excited for February for Mistborn.
Oh my gosh, that's
because,
a long book.
That'll
I'm gonna
be
do
my
audio.
reread.
I've never read it. There's a lot of hype. 2023 is the year of Sanderson, so yeah,
I may do it on audio because it's a long book.
And I
will fall
also
asleep
like
through
the
it
idea
again.
of covering a book that has, been crossover also into adult, marketed as both. I think that's fun.
It'll be a
So-
reread, and as a United States Southerner, I have a lot to say about Mistborn.
Yeah, she's Marta brought it up. That's why Marta gets to
Hello,
be the
Miss
co-conductor.
Bond.
She suggested it. So yeah, that's kind of how the co-conductor system works. Like I want people who are passionate about reading them every month to have one person kind of championing the book. Be it like somebody like Marta who was planning on reading this, or somebody like Casey who wanted to do a reread. Is that right, Casey?
It's
So,
after my first read, yeah.
yeah. So
So is Mistborn going to be a reread or a first-time read for you, Marta?
Marta is not here.
Sorry, I meant.
for Marta, it's going to be a first time read.
I was like, I don't know who I meant if she hasn't been here.
But she could be lurking in the chat, to be fair.
If I read it again, it'll be a reread. I haven't decided yet.
I just read Mistborn last month. I am not picking it back up.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I
I
think
read
you're
it once.
good. I think you're fine.
I'm going to reread it just so things are like fresh in my memory. And
Yeah,
stuff.
it's been a couple years.
whether
since
I'm
I've read it.
in whether I'm in chat or whatnot. I just enjoy being here. So
I
I'll
personally
rewatch
really
it
like the
tomorrow.
first book. So
In March, we're going to be reading Ranger's Apprentice, Runes of Gorlin. Yeah, that's all of the year we have planned out because we will not be reading anything for April. So we're just going to see how the year goes, how this works with co-conductors, leaving recommendations, or if people want to co-conduct or have something they really want to champion, we can all add it to the roster of destinations. Does anybody have anything else to? I don't know if people want to outro, if they want to promo or anything. Otherwise, I'll just roll the outro.
Thanks, Violet,
Roll
for
that
putting this
outro.
whole thing together and for getting us
Yes,
to
thank
read The
you.
Hobbit and everything.
Yeah, well, thanks for showing up.
thanks for some book
I
club.
really enjoyed the book myself.
Deuces,
I-
it's been real.
I just want to say
Since-
part of the reason I really enjoy the Nostalgia Train book club is the chance to read a lot of old books that other people have read, but I missed out on, and then have other people who actually want to talk about it with me. So I've been loving the club. So thank you for the concept of the club.
Yeah, I think it definitely brings, like, even the ones that are rereads, it brings like looking at it more from a literary lens, reading a little more like a deep reading experience, which I like.
Yeah.
And reflective. So yeah, it's fun. So thank you everybody for hopping on board for this one. And see you next year. Bye.
Stand well back from the platform edge.